அனைவருக்கும் வணக்கம். So it's always a pleasure to be back at the home of Rukmini Arunde, the land that has been further sanctified by great persons like Madam Blavatsky, Jiddu Krishnamurti and others. Now we shall commence this inaugural session of the seminar with a small prayer.
गणादिसेवितं कपितजम्बू फलसारभक्षितम् उमासुतं शोकविनाशकारणं नमामि विघ्नेश्वर पादपङ्कजम् नमस्ते शारदा देवी काश्मीरपुरवासिनी त्वामहं प्रार्थये नित्यं विद्यादानं च देहि मे।
It is not only a blessed land, the Kalakshetra, but also this is a place where the fusion of ideas, expressions and styles of expression that has been happening for more than a century now. And it is very appropriate that we have a program connecting Kashmiri cultural traditions and Tamil cultural traditions. And it is a wonderful setting in this auditorium that we have wonderful scholars who will be presenting various dimensions today, and of course tomorrow the talk series continues. Now I request Dr. K. Srinivasa Rao, Secretary Sahitya Academy, to come to the stage. I request Dr. C.K. Garyali to come to the stage, and I request Dr. K. Srinivasa Rao to welcome her with a shawl and a book. Dr. Garyali is a well-known writer and scholar and belongs to Indian Administrative Service. She served as a Principal Secretary to the Governor of Tamil Nadu and Principal Secretary to the Chief Minister of Tamil Nadu. She has also worked in international agencies like World Bank, IFAS, Danish International Development Agency, etc. She has 17 published works to edit, and it's our pleasure to have you, ma'am, with us today. I request Professor Ratanlal Hanglu to come to the dais. I request Dr. K. Srinivas Rao to welcome Professor Hanglu. Dr. Hanglu is a distinguished Kashmiri scholar and historian. He was the Vice Chancellor of University of Allahabad and University of Kalyani, and he has more than 10 published works to his credit. I request Srimati Revati Ramachandran to come to the dais. She is a well-known dancer, choreographer, and teacher of Bharatanatyam. She assumed the charge of director Kalakshetra since 2018. Now I request Dr. K. Srinivas Rao to deliver the welcome address.
Thank you, Dr. Rajmohan. Namaskar and good morning to all of you. Respected Dr. C.K. Garialiji, eminent writer and scholar. Respected Professor Ratanlal Hangluji, eminent Kashmiri writer, scholar, and chief guest of today's program. Dr. Revati Ramachandranji, Director, Kalakshetra Foundation, eminent scholars and students of this beautiful institution, ladies and gentlemen. I'm glad to welcome all of you for this day-long seminar on literary and cultural heritage of Kashmir that we are organizing as part of Vitasta Kashmir Festival being held in different locations by the Ministry of Culture, Government of India under Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav. Friends, Indian subcontinent is the host of hundreds of cultures and languages. This diversity of language, number of cultures, and the amazing way in which they all coexisted and even contributed to each other makes India a very unique place on earth. Today, people from geographically separated regions, cultures and languages, and why even the cognate languages of the neighboring states find it difficult to relate to each other and hence are unable to appreciate the extraordinary phenomena of Indian culture that embraced and carried within it large number of cultures and lifestyles. Such disparity and disconnectedness was not there in the earlier times. There are a number of scholars, pilgrims, and traders who traveled to far-off places and have shared their experiences with others, and they have been preserved for the benefit of posterity in the form of books, inscriptions, etc. This program is about the literary and cultural heritage of Kashmir, and some people may even wonder why this is being held in Chennai, Tamil Nadu, and not in Kashmir. There is a deep connection between the cultures of Tamil Nadu and Kashmir, and over the past several centuries, due to various reasons, we all have forgotten the common threads connecting various cultures of the subcontinent, however geographically distant they are. Outstanding scholars and experts are participating in this seminar, so I will just share some of my thoughts on the literary and cultural heritage of Kashmir and also the connections between Kashmiri and Tamil culture briefly while welcoming all of you. Kashmir has always been the seat of learning and knowledge from times immemorial. People from all corners of the country thronged Kashmir to get access to precious knowledge and manuscripts. Kashmir is the land in which exotic and sublime poetry has been flowing for thousands of years uninterrupted. This non stop production of poetry is not in just one language but in Sanskrit, Kashmiri, Persian, Urdu, and several native tongues. Some of the best folklore poetry, tales, and plays of India can be traced in the land of Kashmir. Even today, some of the finest folk tales come from Kashmir. Kashmiri language and literature have enriched Indian literature and culture without any doubt. The greatest impact from Kashmir on various cultures was made by Abhinav Gupta. He produced works on a wide range of subjects, but the most astonishing and lasting ones were Abhinav Bharati, a commentary on Natya Shastra by Bharata Muni, and Dhvanyaloka Lokana, a commentary on Dhvanyaloka by Anandavardhana. Distinguished minds and intellectual gains of Kashmir transcended cultural and religious denominations, excelled in their chosen fields, and made lasting contributions that permeated all cultures of India. The effects of this knowledge production and sharing can be traced in many other cultures of India, from Bengal to Gujarat, from Kanyakumari to Punjab. The hagiography of many distinguished scholars, saints, and writers from various cultures of India will reveal their association with Kashmiri culture. One may wonder why this stress on connectedness of various cultures, especially with Kashmiri culture. Well, nothing in this world exists in isolation, and sharing and accommodating various points of view enriches both the source and target cultures and also aids in the overall progress of the country. The verses of poets like Lal Det and Haba Khatun have more than similarities with those of Akka Mahadevi of Karnataka and Molla of Andhra Pradesh. The wealth of information about the ancient to medieval Kashmiri literature, philosophy, and culture can be gleaned from Neelamata Purana and Kalhana's Rajatarangani. Sahitya Academy is proud that it has published Rajatarangani with English translation, and it is one of our top selling books. That shows enormous interest that the people of India are continuing to show in the history and culture of Kashmir. Rajatarangani reveals the story of a king of Kashmir traveling all the way to Tamil Nadu and marrying a princess of Chola Desha. Apart from the historical texts such as Rajatarangani, we have several accounts of many philosophers of ancient and medieval times, especially Shankaracharya and Ramanujacharya traveling to Kashmir for different purposes. Again, there are some inscriptions found in the South India, especially Tamil Nadu, about travelers and philosophers from Kashmir, but they need to corroborated. There are also inscriptions about the grants given the Kashmiri king Somanatha to a temple near Tirunelveli in Tamil Nadu. They prove the deep-rooted connection between Kashmir and other cultures of India. When we take up the religions and philosophies, there are connections between Kashmir Shaivism and Shaiva Siddhanta of Tamil Nadu, Buddhist scholars, Sufis, and practitioners of other religious systems and philosophies made Kashmir their home. Precious gems of Buddhist philosophy lie hidden in the Ladakh region, waiting for the world to come and unearth them. There is a famous saying, I quote, Indian literature is one, though written in different languages, unquote. It is the principle on which Sahitya Academy has been functioning since 1954. Academy's functioning has been in tune with the Honorable Prime Minister Sri Narendra Modi's Ek Bharat Shresth Bharat scheme. We are very glad to organize this seminar. I extend my sincere thanks to the Ministry of Culture and Kalakshetra Foundation, particularly Dr. Revati ji, for providing all the help and making this day-long seminar possible. Kashmiri culture and literature are very vast, while time at hand is very short. In this seminar, we have tried our best to cover as much as possible religious and philosophical literature of Kashmir, Kashmiri culture through ages and plays, paintings, dance, and other art forms of Kashmir. I sincerely hope everyone attending and participating in this seminar stands benefited. With these few words, I am glad to welcome all of you once again. Thank you all.
Vitasta is not only a river, it is an expression of and aspirations of all the Kashmiri people. So it is always in its eternally running and nourishes everyone along. So now I request Dr. Garyali to unveil the theme of this seminar.
My dear Rao Sahab, Ratan Lal ji, Revati ji, an assembly of eminent scholars from all over India and Kashmir. Being born in Kashmir, it gives me greatest pleasure to inaugurate this seminar on literary and cultural heritage of Kashmir. It is a privilege for me to be a part of these festivities which celebrate one of the oldest living cultures in the world. Kashmir, known as Satisar or the lake of the Sati, the goddess Parvati, is the place where a body part of Sati fell while enraged Shiva was doing his Tandava with the charred body of Sati on his shoulders. The places where the body of Sati fell are known as Shakti Sthalas, and Kashmir is a Shakti Sthal. Created by draining the lake of Sati, the entire valley of Kashmir is a sacred geography, with the presence of river Vitasta, Mount Harmukh, and the Shankaracharya hill. It was on this hill that Adi Shankara got enlightened about Shakti and composed Saundarya Lahari, his best work in praise of Devi. I am glad that the festival has been named Vitasta, because Kashmir is an ancient river valley civilization and has thrived on the banks of this life-giving, sacred, and venerated river Vitasta, also known as Jhelum and affectionately called Veth in Kashmiri. Vitasta is same to Kashmir as Ganges to north and Kaveri to south. All the important institutions, temples, centers of learning, universities, both viharas, and later Sufi shrines adorn its banks. It's loved, it's held in awe, and it is worshipped. The river itself symbolizes goddess Parvati, the consort of Lord Shiva, who chose to come down to gift the valley with abundant vegetation, food, and fruits not found anywhere else. The Canto 237-238 of Nilvat Puran mentions that sage Kashyapa prayed to Lord Shiva for requesting Devi Uma to give the gift of water to Kashmir Valley. The goddess Uma herself took the form of the river. The Canto 1424 to 1453 further mentioned that listening to the glory of Vitasta, one will be liberated from all sins. It also says that the goddess Kashmira is none other than river Vitasta itself. All the important towns of Kashmir such as Anantnag, Baramulla, Sopore, Avantipura, and Srinagar have sprung on its banks. Srinagar is one of the oldest living cities of the world, along with Varanasi and Kanchipuram, from where the great scholarship and literature emerged. The ancient city of Srinagar, named after goddess Shri, is the very abode of Lakshmi and symbolizes prosperity. The Kashmiri Pandit way of life is intricately connected with the river and its numerous ghats known as Yarbal. The Yarbal plays a very important part in their spiritual, cultural, and religious life. All the important temples of Ganpatiyar, Somyar, Purshyar, Bhattiyar, Raghunath Mandir are located on Vitasta river. The river has been part of concluding Vatuk ceremony of Shivratri when the festival of Lord Shiva comes to an end and after a 20-day celebration. It is connected with performing sacred thread ceremonies and Shraddha ceremonies of our ancestors and for consigning the ashes of our dear departed into its holy waters. Just like the Ganges is worshipped in Hardwar and Varanasi, Kaveri is worshipped in Tanjore, the Vitasta is worshipped in Kashmir. On the day of its birth, it's offered water, milk, vermilion, raw rice, flowers, and people go on a pilgrimage to its source at Veth Votur and Verinag. The festival is known as Veth Truva and falls on the 13 days of Shukla Paksha, the ascending phase of moon in the month of Bhadrapad of Kashmiri calendar. When we are talking of Kashmiri culture, we are talking of one of the oldest living cultures of the world. Our Kashmiri culture is nearly 5,000 years old, whereas the Indian Vikrami calendar is 2079 years old, the Christian calendar is 2023 years old, Islamic Hijri calendar is 1444 years old, the Kashmiri Saptarishi calendar is 5099 years old, starting from the times of Mahabharata. There are references of Lord Krishna having visited Kashmir while going to Gandhara for attending the Swayamvar of Gandhari. After the king of Kashmir, Damodara, died in an attempt to kill Krishna, Krishna installed his widow, Yashomati, as the first female ruler of Kashmir. Instead of snatching the territory of dead king, he installed his wife as the ruler of Kashmir. And she becomes the first queen probably in the world to rule because she's much old before the Cleopatra happened. Pandavas have lived in Kashmir during their Agyatwas. The close relationship between Gandhara, Purushpur, which is present Peshawar, Kashmir and Hastinapur is well recorded. References are available to say that Gautam Buddha visited the valley during his lifetime. Emperor Ashoka made a gift of the valley to Buddhist Sangha, populating the valley with hundreds of viharas and thousands of monks. King Harsha in the 1st century AD conducted 4th Buddhist council at Harwan in Kashmir, which was attended by 5,000 Hindu and Buddhist scholars. The Vasu Mitra of Kashmir presided over the council, which was guided by the great Bodhisattva Nagarjuna. It was the last Buddhist council held anywhere. After the council, the numerous monks from Kashmir went to China, Japan, Korea, and the other parts of Central Asia to spread the teachings of Buddha. During the times of Durbal Varna, Buddhist scholar Yuan Sang visited Kashmir. He was helped by 20 Kashmiri Pandit scholars in translating Buddhist, Sanskrit and Pali scriptures into Chinese. The Lotus Sutra, the most venerated sutra of Buddha, which carries the core of Buddhism, was translated by Kashmiri scholar Kumarajiva from Sanskrit to Chinese. The people of Kashmir have kept their noble traditions and culture alive, basing their day-to-day material and spiritual life on their ancient calendar, living a pious, noble, peaceful, non-violent, and scholarly life on the banks of the river. They were the scholars and sages who made enormous contribution to the literature, philosophy, and culture of India. Of the 24 treatises in Sanskrit, 22 were composed in Kashmir and only 2 in rest of India. According to local legend, the great dramatist Kalidasa was born in Kashmir and left the valley due to the oppressive rule of King Ananda and moved to other parts of India, spending a longer time in Ujjain. Many of his works, such as Meghdut and Kumara Sambhava, are inspired by the landscape and pristine imaginary of Kashmir, which cannot be found elsewhere in India. This is what Kalidas has exclaimed about Kashmir. The place is more beautiful than heaven, and it is benefactor of supreme bliss and happiness. It seems to me that I am taking a bath in a lake of nectar here. Kashmir is the only place where the history of 5,000 years is available in written records such as Rajtarangni and Nilmad Purana. The Nilmad Purana of King Nila, the great Naga king, gave a code of conduct for the new scholar settlers in valley to live in harmony with original people like Nagas, Yakshas, and Pishachas and other forest tribes and attend to their needs. This code of conduct is still followed. Raj Tarangni, written by Pandit Kalhana, gives an exhaustive history of Kashmir in Sanskrit verses. Kashmiri scholars have contributed enormous to folk literature worldwide by producing Brihat Katha, first in the local Pishachi language and later re-adopting it in Sanskrit as Katha Sarit Sagar. The Katha Sarit Sagar, the ocean of tales, is the fountainhead of all folk tales within and outside India, including the famous Vikram mein Betal stories, which we all have read during our childhood in Chanda Mama, not knowing from where they came. Kashmir boasted of not one but 3 universities running along the lines of Nalanda and Taxila. The University of Harvan was a great center of Buddhist learning. University of Vijay Vihara on the banks of Vitasta was a great center of literature, poetry, grammar, Hindu and Buddhist philosophy, astrology, astronomy, mathematics, painting, sculpture, musicology, and more. The University of Sharda Peeth was the highest center of spiritual learning, Advaita, and Shaivism. It is where Adi Shankara's supremacy of Advaita was recognized and he was made to ascend the throne of Sarvajnana Pitha, the throne of absolute knowledge. Till Shankara arrived, the southern gate of Sharda Peeth was kept closed. The southern gate was opened for the first time for welcoming him as the greatest scholar coming from south. From here, Shankara took the essence of Sharda Devi and brought it to Shringeri, where she was re-established by him as Shringeri Sharda in all her glory. Unfortunately, all these universities were destroyed along with their precious manuscripts and libraries in the same manner as the universities of Nalanda and Takshila. We can't even visit the ruins of Sharda Peeth as it is now in POK. Right now, Swamiji, the chief of Shringeri Mutt, has gifted a Murti of Sharda Devi, which is now traveling through India for public viewing and will be finally installed at Sharda Temple at Shadipur near the border of Indo-Pak border. The efforts are now on between the two countries to open the route to Sharda Peeth, so there is a hope for future pilgrimages. While Tamil Nadu has been birthplace of unique Shaiva philosophy called Shaiva Siddhanta, Kashmir has been the home and birthplace of Kashmir Shaivism. A great contribution has been made by Acharya Utpal Deva, who wrote Shiva Sotravali, the hymns to Shiva, which is the greatest example of Kashmir Shaivism devotional poetry. Another of his illustrated work containing verses on the recognition of Lord is Ishwar Pratibhijana Karika. He re-established the philosophy of self-recognition or self-cognition. After Utpal Deva, Acharya Abhinav Gupta made profound contribution to Kashmir Shaivite literature. He was a great philosopher, mystic, musician, poet, dramatist, theologian, logician, etc., and exercised a great influence on Indian culture. He studied under 15 teachers and completed 41 works, of which the longest and most famous is Tantra Loka, an encyclopedia on all aspects of Trika and Kala philosophy of Kashmir Shaivism. His Pratibhijana Vimarshani, though an exposition of Utpal Datta's Sutra, is an original work of great merit. Another great contribution of Abhinav Gupta has been his Abhinav Bharati treatise on Natya Shastra of Bharat Muni. So Natya Shastra is basis of all dance forms in India, Thailand, Indonesia, Cambodia. It was Abhinav Gupta who explained it in great detail in Abhinav Bharati, making it more comprehensible for practical application in dance. His doctrine of Rasadhavani is considered to be the very soul of literature. Here it is worth mentioning that the earliest recorded 7th century reference to dance being performed as per Bharata comes from the Martand Sun temple of Kashmir, where dances performed when the king visited the temple. The grandeur of his rare sun temple built by King Lalitaditya, which was destroyed in the 14th century, was no less than the grandeur of the Brihadishwar temple in Tanjore, built by Rajaraja Chola. Sangeet Ratnakar, written by Saranga Dev, is the basis of all Indian classical music, both Hindustani and Carnatic. Very few people know that family of Saranga Dev moved from Kashmir to Deccan during the times of oppressive rule in Kashmir. Talking about Kashmiri Shaivism literature, we need to recognize the contribution made by great Laleshwari, affectionately called Laldat, the great Shaivite philosopher of 14th century, who for the first time chose to convey philosophical tenets of Kashmir Shaivism through her work in the local Kashmiri language. Before Laldat, spiritual and philosophical teaching were always conveyed in Sanskrit. She is the mother of Kashmiri literature. Following her, we had many more female saints as well as poets such as Rupa Bhavani, Arni Mal, Habba Khatun, and Rijdat, who have made contribution to both the spiritual and romantic poetry of Kashmir. I am very pleased to inaugurate this seminar on literature and culture of Kashmir as part of Vitasta festival and wish to congratulate the organizers, the Government of India, Sahitya Academy, the Kalakshetra for organizing this unique celebration of Kashmir. The seminar will create great awareness and deep understanding of the contribution of Kashmir to the literature and culture of India, some of which have long forgotten. It will emphasize and bring to light the numerous links existing between Kashmir and South India, which encompass dance, music, sculpture, temple architecture, and Shaivite philosophy. It will show to the country what Kashmir really means to India and why it has been always called Crown of India. I will conclude by citing what Pandit Kalhana has said about Kashmir. He says, "It is a place where the sun shines mildly, where being the place created by Rishi Kashyapa for his glory, with lofty houses, learning, saffron, icy cold waters, and grapes, rare in heaven, are plentiful here." He further says, "Kashmir is the best place, Kailash is the best place in three worlds, Trilokas, and Himalaya is the best place in Kailash, and Kashmir is the best place in the Himalayas." Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am, for such a detailed historical perspective. And what seminars like these in a place like Tamil Nadu, and when you try to take the Kashmiri culture, philosophy to other parts of India, and also why this sudden, I mean, some of the millennials, they are wondering why there is such a sudden stress on Kashmir, and there is no better person than Professor Ratanlal Hanglu. I request now Professor Ratanlal Hanglu to address this audience.
Let me first of all wish you all a very happy new year, a very good morning. Our most esteemed Secretary of Sahitya Academy, Shri Srinivas Raoji, respected Dr. Giriali, esteemed Dr. Revati Ramachandran ji, my fellow brilliant academicians and scholars from Kashmir, Sanskritists, and our literary figures, Dr. Agnishekhar, my friend, invited guests, the members of audience, dear students. There's plenty of information that one wants to mediate to public in Tamil Nadu because we have an ancient relationship with you. But as it happens in any seminar, there are constraints of time because everybody has to express his or her own idea. As Pingala Upanishad very rightly says, that even if we do researches and explore things for 1,000 years, we will not reach to the end of this scripture. Likewise, if we continue to explore Kashmir, till the last day this Srishti exists, I think we would not be even an iota of its culture would not be defined, in fact, even at that point of time. The region is very small, there is no doubt about it. Geographically speaking, leaving Ladakh aside, because there are sometimes confusions when we come to various parts of India. My experience of having 40 years traversed, particularly South India, after having taught for 40 years at Hyderabad Central University, is that they still have Bollywood images sometimes about Kashmir. Kashmir is a very small area, but very potential culturally in the world. When one of the Aryan tribes came around 4000 BC, the leader of the tribe entered and raised his hands and said, Kashyapa, what a beauty! The beauty that does not exist anywhere in the world. In Europe, people say Switzerland is the most beautiful area and so on. And Kashmir is the Switzerland. I would say that's wrong. Because there is no second Kashmir and there are no second Kashmiris. Not that I have megalomania about Kashmir, but it's a reality. You keep exploring. From very early times, from Gufkral, where the first couple appeared in prehistoric times, and how from prehistoric times the Kashmiris, brick by brick, built such a civilizational value, contributing to Vedas, Upanishads, Puranas, Brahmanas, and so many other literary and religious texts. Religious and literary texts have a special relationship that is seen in Kashmir. And that's what Rigved also says when Rigved mentions Savlampayampas dharmestrayate mehto bayat. That is religion which provides answer, dharma, to all your problems. That's where the fragrance of Kashmiri civilization comes. Because Kashmiris or Kashmiri culture is a constituent of many civilizations. You go prior to Indus Valley civilization, you will find that Kashmiris were prior to that traversing entire Central Asia, Persia, Eastern Europe, the lands of China. Look at the way Kumarajiva is acknowledged as one of the best teachers by Buddhas in China. Gunavardhan, which Dr. Giriali mentioned you, it was in 348 that the Chinese emperor sponsored his trip to Japan and other places in the world to spread Buddhism. And each philosophy that came to Kashmir, that was evolved by Kashmiris, was critically examined by Kashmiris. It's not that everything they took and just digested and assimilated. No. The greatest instinct of Kashmiri civilization and Kashmiri culture is that they critique in a healthy manner to everything and then try to digest what is what. What is beneficial not for the Kashmiris, but for the entire humanity in the world. We talk of cultures, we say subordinate culture, dominant culture, popular culture, and do include political institutions, ideas, literature, fine arts, music. And I think I would not be wrong if I say that in a couple of decades we'll be also talking about the cyber culture. But Kashmir goes in its specificities of culture and literature beyond all these things. If we characterize or periodize Kashmir from very early ancient times down to present day, I have discovered that there are 7 phases, starting from prehistory, which succeed each other, define the colonial, the post-colonial periodization of Indian history and culture. And if you look at these 7 periods, there are 2-3 important things which cut across this entire civilization's culture. which rather I would say they overarch in every period coming from ancient times down to present day. One of the genre is this secular element. I'm not talking of modern secularism. I'm talking of religious versus non-religious. And if you look at that ancient aspect, you find that the Shaivism, which was early first Buddhism, and heretic tendencies and traditions have been very strong from ancient times down to present day. And these heretic traditions, they never contradicted with any aspect of Hinduism or any variant of Hinduism, because Hinduism is a very vast area. They do not contradict with Islam. A Muslim may read Quran in his house in a mosque, but when he faces extreme crisis, he goes to the ziyarat, the shrine of heretics, which is pre-ancient, I would say. Our heretics have been named and renamed and renamed, in fact, down to present times. If you look at the shrines of these rishis, Manak Shah becomes Man Shah, Manak Rishi. But the shrine continues down to present day. They always go back to these places for solace and for seeking answers to their questions and problems and challenges. Even though Buddhism came and Kashmiris took Buddhism to entire Central Asia, to China, but they produced critically its own variant of Sarvastivada school of Buddhism, which was different than the rest of the philosophy of Ashtanga Marga. It has its own specificity. For some time, the Shaivites did not get patronage, because there is always the question of patronage for the cultures to develop, for certain philosophies to develop. I am reminded of the period when Hyeon Song came to a shrine called Zeshta Rudra, which was a Buddhist site, but today it is known as the general Mother Goddess cult shrine. And he came in his itinerary stating that I have only 15 days time to come. But he was tempted, overwhelmed by the great Sanskrit and Aramaic scholars at Zeshta Rudra and stayed in a stuff. 15 days he stayed for more than a couple of months there, learning Sanskrit, and his mentions and admits how he was really overwhelmed by their critical thinking, their capacity to debate, and their knowledge. We had a special relationship with Tamil Nadu because our Shaivites and Tamil Shaivites debated the philosophy right from Somananda's time. Bhatta Kallata, Abhinav Gupta, so many others, in fact. Abhinav Gupta, of course, came from UP and settled down in Kashmir. There are plentiful of, if you go through Kemendra, you can look at the way scholars came from as far as Bengal to study Shaivism. And then we gave the Trikka philosophy. Trikka philosophy in the sense, look at the scientificity of Trikka philosophy. In India, we are not in a position to get rid of casteism even now. There's a very important Tamil saying that once a Dalit came to a priestly family and the priest says, I loved you so much, I want to hug you, but the only problem is that I have to take bath later on. But that is not Trikka philosophy. In Trikka philosophy, the first thing that happened in 4th century AD was caste was completely abolished. If today downtrodden labor class from Madhya Pradesh, from UP, from Assam, from Orissa, from any other region comes to Jammu or Kashmir, they feel very comfortable in Hindu families particularly, let me tell you. Because no Kashmiri Hindu entertains caste. It is in our blood. Because Trikka philosophy has taught us that Shiva abides in everybody. It was because of this Trikka philosophy, if you read H.H. Wilson, The Hindu History of Kashmir, there's a Sanskrit verse which I have translated and found for the first time, which people did not bother. That the Kashi Vishwanath temple Shiva Linga was brought from Kashmir. It were the Kashmiris who installed the Kashi Vishwanath Linga there. It was Mohanlal Kaur Kashmiri who helped British colonialism to spread its tentacles into Central Asia, threatening Russia. It was the Kaur family which facilitated Mongol invasion also and helped Genghis Khan. Not only philosophy and literature and other aspects, you find that Kashmiris have played a very, very significant role keeping in view. You show me a single branch of knowledge, polity, culture, aesthetics, where the members from this small community are missing. And this culture was not evolved in post-14th century. This culture was evolved in very, very ancient times and made a very significant progress. You find that this Buddhist philosophy, Sarvastivada Sukula Buddhism, heretic tradition, the Shaiva philosophy, and then Laldat before she left. Look at the crisis. I will tell you a very interesting thing. You read G. Naidu's scriptures on Buddhism, which he has translated now. There's plentiful of literature. When Mongols came and took away thousands of men and women and sold them in the market, thousands, I am telling you, and sold them in the markets of Central Asia, Egypt, Iraq, many other places all over the world. The Kashmiris responded philosophically. Because in 14th century, Arabs came, Egyptians came, Afghans came, Turks came, Tajiks came. This is also a misnomer that they came because there were a lot of Muslims in Central Asia and therefore for spread of Islam. This is a misnomer. There's plentiful of literature that they were all over the crisis, they were coming to seek refuge in Kashmir. And what did these people do? Even if I stay for 1,000 years in Tamil Nadu, I may continue my tradition. But in the heart of my heart, I would be proud of Kashmir always. That's what happens to any civilization if a Tamilian goes to Kashmir, if a Kannadiga goes to Kashmir or somewhere else. But look at the resilience of Kashmiri civilization and culture, that all those who came in thousands and thousands, look at the literature that is provided to us by Andri Gundar Frank, Centrality of Central Asia, and the people who came, they all accepted Kashmiri culture as superior culture and subordinated their civilizational values, whatever, whether it was tribal or non-tribal or detribalized situation, they subordinated that to Kashmiri culture and took pride in it. I can give you a very wonderful example, you'll be surprised. The day Sheikh Abdullah was jailed in 1953, that morning also we had 450 plus Kazakhs coming from Kazakhstan. 200 of them left for Turkey, rest all stayed in Kutliba, Ganderbal area. Maybe in the past few decades they also said, "Hum kya chahte hain azadi." By what azadi? You are not a Kashmiri. But they have all submerged, you can imagine, over a period of time, giving up their roots, not going back to their roots, but changing, because it is not their greatness. The greatness is the values left behind by these Kashmiri philosophers, intellectuals, writers. We have plentiful of literature, Krishna Dev Raya's literature, Sangam literature in Tamil Nadu, Mangal Kavyas in Bengal, Bakhars in Maharashtra, plentiful of truckloads of literature in every language and region. But why it takes only for us to recognize Kalhana, who also wrote a Kavya, but that Kavya became such a wonderful historical text wherein he critiques his own father at the functioning of the court, where his relations and uncles were also working as ministers and important officials. His father was a commander of the frontiers at that point of time, but he critiques him. He takes information every day from a very ordinary servant who had no biases left, and then examines that, and that's what goes into making of such a wonderful text in the world. The first historical text of India. When we compare that with the positivists, Marxists, colonialists, many other genre of historians, Kalhana stands alone. And he stands very tall in history writing of Kashmir and the world, of course. You look at his approach, his sources, and his vision at that point of time. Look at, I was referring the crisis that when these thousands of people were taken as hostages and sold as slaves. What should have been the normal reaction? To take up stones and throw it at the people? No. Lalla came forward, the great poetess, the great spiritualist, the great icon archetype of civilization, and said, Shiv Shvi Thali Thali Rozan Mauzan Batatam Salman. Trukhai Chukta Pan Parznav Saiche Sahibasid Zainizan. That if you are accepting the philosophy of Tripka and Shaivism, then when you say Shiva resides in everybody, he's in everybody's Atma, then don't make a distinction between a Hindu and a Muslim, between a Bhatta, the term being used for all of us in Kashmir, and others. You realize yourself. That is how you will become one with the God. After this, we also find, apart from production of plentiful of literature from ancient times down to 14th century, a remarkable development takes place. Even though Muslim historians continue from 14th century taking clues from Kalhana and Jonaraja and write histories, but the marked difference is that right from Kerala up to Kashmir, but not in Kashmir, all the scholars in Iran, in Persia, in other places in the world, when they are talking of the evolution of Islam, they are dubbing the civilizations as Jahiliyyah before the coming of Islam. That all civilizations are not good civilizations, it was only after the coming of Islam. But the historians, even Muslim historians in Kashmir, do not do that, because you cannot shut reason to that cultural development that had taken place earlier. None of, looking at the first Tariq Sayyid Ali's, Tariq Kashmir, nowhere he mentions about Jahiliyyah and Islamic civilization. Not at all. He is talking of the facts and trying to copy the style of Kalhana and Jonaraja. So Lal Ded on one side laid the foundations of world, not India, I would say world multiculturalism. If the scholars of earlier periods or post-modern scholars have to look for multiculturalism, I think they cannot ignore Laleshwari. They just cannot ignore, because she is the founder of multiculturalism in the world. It's not, as people say, oh, these phenomena of nationalism, capitalism, of course, is later stage, that these are modern concepts and so on. But you have this concept listed there much earlier, in fact. Then came Paramarth Saraf. This was provided to by Abhinav Gupta earlier, but it was picked up by rishis, Sufi saints, and what we call Adhyatmikta, Paramarth, or our Muslim brethren calls it Tasawwuf, which has also its own specificities. In all these periods, we see that one of the important aspects has been that Kashmiris have tried to seek resolution of these problems by going back to philosophy. Even in 1990s, one of the villagers who did not know how to read and write, but he provided orally spiritual poetry, Zargar Habib. You know what he says? He's appealing in his poetry to Muslims not to take up guns, because that's not the tradition of Kashmir. And he says, Achivyat Naras, Achivyat Garas, Zalvanis Naras Karvatvas. That you go back to shrines. Before that, a couple of lines he talks about that, go back to shrines and seek solution through spiritually to your problems and so on. Pakistan's duty would be always, neighbor's duty is always, politically speaking, to destabilize its neighbor. And you cannot make dog's tail straight even if you iron it 100 times. That mentality would always be there. But we should continue to explore the variants of Kashmir's culture, Kashmir's literature, its Sufi poetry, its Sanskrit poetry. I would personally be obliged and request on behalf of all our Kashmir scholars to our great Srinivas Rao Sahab, who has taken really wonderful initiatives in Sahitya Academy after he took over, that he should order for collection of entire Mahatmya literature, and you have Sanskrit scholars, and get them translated, because this is a great wealth that Kashmir will never be in a position to reconstruct. Mahatmyas need to be provided to public. You need to visit different museums and identify these things, because this wealth belongs to the world, not only to Kashmir and India. It belongs to the world. I will, very simple expression of Kashmiri poetry I want to tell you. There's a poet who says, Zar zajda zar kota zar naichas mai, baraichehem barmaras bar kota go. In the first line, you find word zar being interpreted in 3 different meanings. Zar zajda zar kota zar naichas mai. That he has burned me. I may not be the exact translator. How much should I tolerate? The fellow does not have even an iota of love for me. It's a spiritual poetry, it's not a romantic. Bara Achehem bar maras bar kota go. Even if you would enter my house, I would sacrifice lamb. But the amount of how much anger he has, how much negligence he is following towards me. You do not find in any poetry. We love all poetry from all regions of India. We love Ghalib, we love Kalhana, we love everybody. But this expression you don't find anywhere in literature. And there is plenty of such information which is available to all of us. Despite the crisis of 14th century, crisis of 18th century, which have been in a series from 14th century till date, I would say that if 1/100th part of a single Kashmiri Pandit survives, the civilization would again and again and again make a comeback. Because it is not majority which makes difference in the world. if you have read Rousseau, Voltaire, the great philosophers of the world, including Kalhana, Manka, and others, it is the smallest minority that makes public opinion. It's not majority. We may shout from rooftops, but it is minority which makes, public opinion in the world for any development to go through. I don't claim to be a great scholar. As the Upanishadic saying says, that there are people who are completely ignorant, they are in darkness, but those who have studied much more, they are in still far more darkness. I profusely thank the Secretary. I would love to talk to you more and more, but problem is our time has also to be budgeted. But I would end with the words, अब और आएंगे नगमों की खिलती कलियां चुनने वाले, हमसे बेहतर कहने वाले, तुमसे बेहतर सुनने वाले. Thank you all.
Thank you, Professor Hanglu, for such a comprehensive presentation. Small is beautiful. Yeah. And now I request Dr. Revati Ramachandran to conclude the session by sharing her thoughts.
Namaste. The Honorable distinguished scholars on stage, Sri Srinivasa Rao sir from Sahitya Academy, Dr. C.K. Gareli ma'am, and Dr. Ratan Lal Hangu. And all these scholars who have gathered here, students, faculty members, and other people who have gathered here, these 4 days of celebration of Kashmir through the Vitasta festival is indeed a great move by the Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav of the Government of India, in which we are celebrating under the theme of cultural pride. We have taken the theme of Vitasta, Kashmir, where the best of Kashmir is to be celebrated. And we're also having the aim of placing Kashmir on the Buddhist circuit in India, and also to socialize the idea of the best of Kashmir with the concept of Ek Bharat, Shreshth Bharat, and also to connect the events in each state with the theme of water and sustainability through a river connect. Kalakshetra Foundation, founded by Rukmini Devi Arundale in the year 1936, stands testimony to what culture does to our nation. Culture is something which is very, very important. All of us know it. India is considered to be one of the world's most ancient civilization. Indian thinkers, we know, have pioneered thoughts and discoveries in medicine, astrology, astronomy, and mathematics long before the emergence of these disciplines in other nations, in other parts of the world. Indian music, dance, painting, and sculpture, as well as the classical Sanskrit language, have the sophistication that distinguishes a highly evolved society. The culture of India is a living expression of simplicity and the profundity of the people. Heritage is both tangible and intangible, natural and cultural, movable and immovable, and documentary assets are inherited from the past and transmitted to the future generations by virtue of their irreplaceable value. Initially, referring exclusively to the monumental remains of culture, the concept of heritage has gradually been expanded to embrace living culture and contemporary expressions. But what do we have of Kashmir today is something that we have to think. Down in South, I'm so happy that the Ministry of Culture thought of having this festival right down here in Tamil Nadu first, because I don't know how many of us have even thought of Kashmir for quite some custodians of culture. She thought that every home, was resplendent with art and it was something that the Indian women's responsibility to keep up this culture and pass it on to the other generations. Thank you again, Sir Srinivas Rao, sir, for having brought me here to give a small note, and thanks to one and all of you. Namaskar.
Thank you very much. Now we have running tea in the back side. Those who wish to have a cup of tea, please go and join us. Very soon we will start our next session. And we'll continue. Dr. Rajendran, please let me know when you are ready.
Vitasta, now known as the River Hill, flows through the verdant valley of Kashmir. Of the Vitasta sustains the imagination of India. For the rishis in the early 14th century after the advent of Islam is manifested in the sixth.
Those who are in the participants of next session, please do have a tea and join us, please.
Sacred architecture of Kashmir. In the
आजादी के अमृत महोत्सव का प्रारंभ हो रहा है।
Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav is an initiative to highlight the glorious history, culture and achievements of our country in the last 75 years since independence. Amrit Mahotsav was initiated to commemorate the 75th year of the country's independence, and since March 2021, the country has been celebrating this festival with great enthusiasm and fervor. The entire program is based on the 5 pillars of freedom struggle: ideas at 75, actions at 75, achievements at 75, resolve at 75. The Dandi Yatra was a watershed movement in the freedom struggle of the country that ignited the spirit and energy of the countrymen to act against the British and reclaim freedom. Hence, Gujarat was chosen as the place to establish and commence the grand celebratory movement of Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav. Multiple programs were organized under the aegis of Amrit Mahotsav to celebrate the spirit of independent India. By INA at Moirang, Manipur. Book launch on women freedom fighters. Lord Birsa Munda Jayanti as Tribal Pride Day. Cultural program in memory of Khudiram Bose. Inauguration of renovated complex of Jallianwala Bagh Memorial. Drone show on Indian freedom struggle icons. Unveiling of Netaji's hologram statue on his 125th birth anniversary. More than 2 crore citizens participated in the Rashtragan campaign. A cultural program showcasing the diversity of Northeast India's tribal dances was conducted in the village of Rizazo in Nagaland. With Kashi Utsav, the world got a never-before peep into the rich cultural and literary heritage of Banaras. A campaign #Postcards to PM was initiated where school children from across the country wrote messages to the Prime Minister sharing their dream and vision for the India of their future. To mark the International Day of Yoga, programs were conducted at 75 places across the country to promote the significance of yoga. Vande Bharatam, a grand spectacle of dance, was organized and its winners got a chance to showcase their talent at the Republic Day Parade 2022. To promote the spirit of Jan Bhagidari, events like installation of 225 feet national flag in Ladakh, Desh Bhakti Geet writing, Rangoli making and Lori writing competitions were initiated for people to come forward and contribute in large numbers. To paint the sky with the colors of Amrit Mahotsav, the festival of Umang Udan Utsav was initiated where more than 3 crores kites were flown. With the launch of Gati Shakti Yojana, under which 75 programs were initiated, 75,000 people received the keys to their dream homes. To reflect upon and celebrate the life-giving and saving aspect of the rivers of our country, Nadi Utsav was conceived. The enthusiasm displayed in global celebrations of Amrit Mahotsav through Jan Bhagidari is a reflection of the commitment people have towards this grand vision. As we move closer to celebrate 75 years of India's independence, we look forward to take the message of Amrit Mahotsav to the farthest corners of the world.
आजादी का अमृत महोत्सव हमें
Welcome back, everyone. Kashmir is not only known for its beauty, poetry, etc. Some of the most sublime and lofty philosophies can be traced in Kashmir. We have Kashmiri Saivism, some strands of Buddhism, and Hindu. Of course, Hinduism is there, Islam is there. So this session is devoted to religious and philosophical literature of Kashmir. And this session will be chaired by Professor C. Rajendran. I request Professor Rajendran to come to the dais. He is an eminent Sanskrit scholar and former Dean of Languages and Literature and University of Calicut. And at present, he is a professor in the Sanskrit literature in Shankaracharya University in Kaladi. And this session will have 4 speakers in the order of the subject they are going to talk about. First speaker will be M.A. Alvar. He is from Mysore and he is a well-known Sanskrit scholar and Indian philosopher. He has been working as a Nyaya Shastra at the Government Maharaja School in Mysore. He has more than 50 books to his credit. So second speaker will be Dr. Advaita Vadini Kaul. And she is a well-known Kashmiri scholar and various aspects of cultural heritage, intellectual traditions, and historiography. Her writings form part of many important volumes in India and abroad. The next speaker is Ajaz Muhammad Shaikh. He will speak about Islam, and he is a well-known Kashmiri writer and presently serving as the head department of linguistics and Urdu in the University of Kashmir. He has 12 published works to his credit. And the final speaker will be Dr. Satish Vimal, and he is an eminent Kashmiri writer, published more than 30 books, including poetry collections, criticisms, editor, and translations also. And he will be speaking on Kashmir Saivism. Now, I request Professor Rajendran to take over and conduct this session.
Thank you, Mr. Srinivas Rao, Siddharth Kak ji, whom I met yesterday, all the distinguished officials of this magnificent institution, my dear fellow panelists. It is a great privilege to chair a session on religion and philosophy in this deliberation. And I was wondering what exactly are my credentials. Suddenly I remembered the name of the great Shankaracharya, who belongs to Kerala, my own home state. And probably when he was alive, in the 8th century AD, he was speaking Tamil. So there is also a Tamil collection. At that time, Malayalam had not got it separated from Tamil. So these are some of the points which came to my mind. So I don't have much of time at my disposal because I have to do justice to the presentations which are to come after my brief inaugural speech. So I'll just read out what I have prepared in advance. The religious and philosophical literature of Kashmir. In the cultural history of India, Kashmir enjoys a privileged position which is seldom surpassed by other parts of India. This is due to the fact that the physical beauty of this landscape, this enchanting landscape, was graced with the presence of a galaxy of philosophers, mystics, writers, religious leaders, artists, and literary critics who have made indelible impression in the collective psyche of India. Abhinav Gupta, doubtlessly one of the most celebrated personalities of Kashmir, rightly goes into raptures when he when describing Kashmir. To quote Abhinav Gupta, Sarvo Logaha Kaviratha Buddho Yatra Shurobi Vagmi Chandradyodihi Masranagadayaha Punya Naryascha Yatra Angarojwala Vikasita Ananda Saushumna Nadi Grasta Arkenduhu Gagana Vimalo Yogininam Cha Vargaha. All people here are poets, scholars, valorous, and orators. Ladies are graced with moon's luster and delicate gait. The path of Sushumna of yoginis is pure like sky and brilliant like burning ember, and has captured the sun and the moon. It is in Tandraloka. Bilhana, in his Vikramanka Charita, maintains that in no other place save Kashmir, the Sharada Desha, one can see that poetic imagination flourishes along with the filaments of saffron. Sahodaraha Kunguma Kesaranam Bhavanti Nunam Kavitavilasaha Na Sharada Desham Apasya Drishtaha Tesham Yadanyatra Maya Prarohaha. In the religious history of India, Kashmir has played a pivotal role in as much as it has been a crucible of different traditions like Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism, and Sufi mysticism. One interesting feature of the Kashmiri tradition was the readiness with which philosophers and religious preceptors engaged themselves with thought strains of even rival systems and schools. Kashmir has been the cradle of Indian aesthetics and poetics, as is testified by the fact that many great writers on poetics like Bhamaha, Udbhada, Rudrada, Anandavardhana, Bhattanayaga, Bhattatauda, Abhinav Gupta, Mahima Bhatta, Kundaga, Kshemendra, and Ruyaga, to list a few, belonged to Kashmir. Probably the greatest philosopher produced by Kashmir is Abhinav Gupta, who is credited with more than 42 books, including philosophical masterpieces like the Tantraloka and Ishvara Pratyabhijna Vimarsini, and aesthetic classics like the Dhunyaloka Lochana and Abhinav Bharati. Abhinav Gupta seems to have transcended sectarian limitations in his pursuit of knowledge. Abhinava sought preceptors of high order in each and every discipline, maintaining that a disciple with a passion for knowledge should move from one teacher to another like a bee moving from one flower to another. Amodarthi yatha bringaha pushpad pushpandaram vrajet vijnanarthi tadha shishyo guroho guryandaram vrajet. He approached logicians, Vaidikas, Bauddhas, Jainas, Vaishnavites, and others out of curiosity to learn Shastras. His aim seems to have been to learn everything openly and to establish the philosophy of Pratyabhijna over and above other systems. This healthy open-mindedness, which is seen in varying degrees in other stalwarts of Kashmir, has resulted in a certain enrichment of the philosophical literature of the place. The most prominent philosophy associated with ancient Kashmir is Shaivism, and the appellation Kashmir Shaivism itself is telltale of the distinctive philosophical character of the legacy. Shaivism developed in Kashmir both in monistic and dualistic traditions. The monistic strain is represented by the Trika system. It believes in the threefold existence of Shiva, Shakti, and Nara. Nara, Shakti, Shivatmagam, Trigam. Though monistic, it does not believe in that the universal is unreal. The universe is actually the manifestation of God brought about by the free will of the god called Swadandriya Shakti. Like its creator, it is real. The Kashmiri Shaivism strives to remove the veil of ignorance that separated the individual self from the universal self. It does not recognize any discrimination on the basis of caste or creed, as is vouchsafed by the dictum, Natra Adhigara Bhedaha Kopyasti. Professor Navajivan Rastogi describes it as the greatest humanistic attainment of Kashmir. The umbrella term, however, should not make us oblivious of the fact that it had at least 4 distinct streams in the form of Pratyabhijna, Kula, Spanda, and Krama. The Pratyabhijna system, explained by Somanandanatha and Ulpaladeva and perfected as a system by Abhinavagupta, believes that realization of the God is actually the recognition of one's true nature, and all the glory of the immanent God is manifested only after this recognition takes place. The gist of the doctrine is beautifully presented by Ulpaladeva in a pithy verse. Teisteirapyupayajidaihi upanatastanyah sthidopyandige kando lokasamana evam aparitnyado narendum yatha logasyaisha tatha anavekshita guna swatmavi vishweshwaro naivalam nija vaibhavaya tadidam tat pratyabhijna udita. This verse refers to a lover of a lovesick lady who has come to the side of her after many requests. If he is comprehended as some person in a general way like any other, he will not be able to engage himself in amorous sports with her. The predicament of the innermost self or the people at large is very similar to him. The inner self, who is the Supreme Lord, will not be able to reveal his glory. That is why his recognition is necessary. The system believes in Abhasavada, as per which all the subjective and objective phenomena are manifestations of the self. The system postulates the illuminative power called Prakasha and reflective power called Vimarsha in the self. The Kula system, promulgated by Sumatinatha and Shambhunatha, Abhinavagupta's teacher, considers the universal being as a source of origin and dissolution of the universe alike. Yatrodidam idam chitram vishwam yatra astamedisha tat kulam vithi sarvatnya shiva shakti vivarjidam. The Spanda system, promulgated by Vasugupta, Kallada, Mugula, and Bhattenduraja, postulates a vibratory power, Spanda, in God, manifesting inwardly and outwardly. It is believed that Shiva himself revealed its secret to Vasugupta in a dream. The proponents of the Krama system are Bhudiraja and Helaraja. It believes in the progression of the devotee step by step. That is why it is called Krama. The rise of the Kundalini power involves the arousal of one chakra after another, culminating in the final experience. All these schools share the basic axioms in the form of the postulation of the ultimate reality of the consciousness and the possibility of realization. The dualistic form of Shaivism developed into 10 dualistic tantras, which later fused into Shaiva Siddhanta. It was represented by preceptors like Sadyojodi, Brihaspati, and Shankarananda. Apart from Shaivism, the Pancharatra system also seems to have developed in Kashmir. The Bhagavad Gita had a special place in Kashmiri cultural space, and the Kashmiri version consisted of 745 verses as against 700 verses in the widely accepted version. The Gita was commented upon by a host of Kashmiris, including Abhinavagupta, who gives equal importance to Jnana, Karma, and Bhakti as means of salvation, and who sees the fight between Pandavas and Kauravas as symbolically representing the fight between good and evil impulses of human personality. A towering figure in Kashmir's philosophical heritage is Bhartrihari, who, through his Vakyapadiya, has made outstanding contribution to the philosophy of language, asserting that the whole universe is a manifestation of the beginningless and endless Shabda Brahman, Anadi Nidhanam, Shabda Tattvam Yadaksharam. He has developed a holistic and integral philosophy of language which maintains that there is a basic unity over and above the individual components of language, and all divisions like parts of speech are arbitrary and only pedagogical in function. Developing the concept of spoda, the integral linguistic sign, he maintains that language conveys its meaning through an instantaneous flash. Human species, here he anticipates Noam Chomsky, human species has an intuitive and innate predisposition towards language skills, like birds who build nests and sing in the spring. Bhartrhari also outlines 3 stages in the manifestation of language, from its subtle form to the gross form, namely Madhyama, Pashyanti, and Vaikhari. Bhartrhari's influence on other domains of knowledge has also been great. Acknowledging his indebtedness to the Spoda doctrine, Anandavardhana, the outstanding poetician of Kashmir, pays a magnificent compliment to the tribe of grammarians who, in his words, are the foremost among the learned. Pradhamehi Vidwamso Vayyakaranaha. Kayyada, the illustrious commentator of Mahabhashya, is another important figure in the history of grammatical philosophy produced by Kashmir. Another notable name associated with Kashmir is that of Jayanta Bhatta, the celebrated author of Nyaya Manjari, a commentary on Nyaya Sutra. He was known as Vrittikara and probably flourished in the 11th century. Jayanta is devastating in his attack on Buddhist philosophy, and he also seems to have criticized the Dhwani theory of Anandavardhana. His another work is called Nyaya Kalika, a commentary on Bhasarvatnya's Nyaya Sara. Bhasarvatnya departs from the tradition in his rejection of Upamana as a distinct pramana and his conception of moksha as characterized by eternal happiness. In this last respect, Professor Rastogi maintains that he was influenced by the tenets of Kashmiri Shaivism. Buddhism had a long and illustrious tradition in Kashmir belonging with the period of Ashoka. Nagasena, the author of Milinda Panchaha, was in all probability a Kashmiri. The 4th Buddhist council was convened by Kanishka in Kashmir, and Ashokasha was brought as its vice president. According to Zhang Yuan Hua, the services of Buddhist scholars from Kashmir were acclaimed in the medieval China, and they were also active in the Far East. Kashmir also witnessed the flowering of Buddhist logic from the time of Dharmottara, who brought to the fore the philosophical speculations of both Dingnaga and Dharmakirti. Dharmottara wrote extensive commentaries on Dharmakirti's Pramana Vinishchaya and Nyaya Bindu. Dharmakirti is one of the intellectual giants produced by classical India, and his intellectual contributions are of such a high order that people found it difficult to understand. He often lamented that his philosophy will perish with him for want of a proper recipient. It is interesting that Anandavardhana, who was not a Buddhist, wrote a gloss over the commentary of Dharmottara on Pramana Vinishchaya. Many of the commentaries of Dharmakirti's works are available in Tibet, which shows the great popularity they enjoyed across Asia. Kalhana, an illustrious son of Kashmir, in his celebrated Rajatarangini, crisply brings to the fore the extraordinary nature of Kashmir in everything. Vidya, Veshmani Tungani, Kungumam, Samkhidam, Payaha, Drakshedi, Yatra Samanyam Asti, Tridiva Durlabham, which means learning, high-dwelling places, saffron, ice water, grapes, and the like. What is commonplace in Kashmir is difficult to secure even in paradise. This should serve as an epitaph to our brief survey. Thank you very much.
Can you just load my... Namaste Sharade Devi Kashmira Puravasini Tvamaham Prarthaye Nityam Vidyam Buddhim Cha Dehi Me Apurvam Yadvastu Prathayati Vinakarana Kalam Jagadgrava Prakhyam Nijarasamasarat Cha Kramat Prakhyopakhya Prasarasubhagam Bhasayati Tat Saraswatyastatvam Kavisahridayakhyam Vijayate. I am extremely happy to have been invited to address this august audience consisting of stalwarts from various languages, various philosophies, various places in India in a very august atmosphere of this wonderful auditorium of Kalakshetra. Even as I was listening to the wonderful contribution of Kashmir to various genres of literature, philosophy, tantra, agama, etc., I was reminded of a verse from Bhagavad Gita, wherein Lord Krishna says, Urdhvamulam adhashakam ashwatham prahuravye. There is a large people tree or ashwatha vriksha which has its roots upwards and all the branches are facing downwards. Similarly, when we see the land of India, it is like this, where Kashmir is there and it has just branched off to various places. So that way, we can see that the roots of India are up, which is Urdhva Moolam, and Adhashakam, it has just watered down until Kanyakumari. So this is an epithet which can actually serve for us to understand what is the greatness of Kashmir. And today, I have been given an unenviable task by the Honorable Secretary of Sahitya Academy, Dr. Srinivas Raoji, to speak about Abhinava Gupta in about 15 to 20 minutes. It's like describing an ocean in 3 or 4 words, because an ocean has so many features that one cannot describe even by talking about it for 5 or 10 years. Acharya Abhinava Gupta, that's why I have mentioned him as a colossal literature, a rhetorician, poet, philosopher, and several other facets to his scholarship, which is unparalleled in Indian literature and history. So, though it's an unenviable task, I will make a small attempt. In fact, it has been my privilege to have been associated with Sahitya Academy for the last 4 or 5 years when I first came into contact. And I have been associated with many other institutions associated with the Ministry of Culture. And with due regards to all the academies, I can very proudly and confidently say that Sahitya Academy is the best among all the central academies, because it is rendering yeoman service to the cause of Indian literature, Indian culture, and everything that is associated with it. It's not an easy task to balance all the 24 or 25 languages in India. And we are proud to have a secretary like Srinivas Raoji, who is doing this wonderful task where he gives equal importance to all the languages and is interested in promoting all of these. Next slide. So when we see the works of Abhinava Gupta, you can see I will not read out all of them for want of time. We have Stotra literature, which is propitiation to various deities, especially Shiva, Shakti, etc. Then you have Tantra, that is Shaiva Tantra. Then next. Then philosophy, you can see so many works. And then as far as what we call as the Alankara Shastra, it is rhetoric as it is translated by modern literatures. And today I will just give you a glimpse. That's why I have put it as a glimpse to the literary genius of Abhinava Gupta, what he had to contribute. So Please go to the next slide. So I will just say a few words about the Lochana commentary. So he authored this wonderful commentary called Lochana on the Dhvanyaloka. So what is Dhvanyaloka? Dhvanyaloka is a glimpse or a detailed account of what Dhvani is. So for those of you who are not familiar with the concept of Dhvani, so when many people had assembled like this in a place, a person remarked, Astameti Gabhastiman. The sun is setting. Then immediately a person who was a very pious Brahmin, he said, it is time for me to do Sandhya Vandanam or my evening prayers. So this person is suggesting that I should go and do my evening prayers. Another person who was a thief, he was also present there. He thought that this person is suggesting to me by saying the sun is setting, that it is time for me to start my work of burgling some house. And one more person was there who was very enamored of his paramour, and he thought that when the sun is setting, it is time for me to meet my paramour. So these are all suggested meanings which can be given as an example for Dhvani. But it is not limited to this, because Dhvani is said to be the Atma or the soul of the Kavya. That's why he says, Anandavardhana says, Kavyasya Atma Dhvaniriti Budhaihi Yas Samamnata Purvaha. And he has named his work as Dhvanyaloka, the light on Dhvani. It's a wonderful, wonderful work. And without the commentary of Abhinava Gupta, we cannot understand Dhvanyaloka. That is why Abhinava Gupta has very aptly named his commentary as Lochana. That means, who can see light? Only a person who has eyes can see the light. He can comprehend light, he can comprehend everything only if he has eyes. So only if you see through the Lochana commentary of Abhinava Gupta, you can understand what Dhvanyaloka is. Then, in the first shloka, he very beautifully describes what this work is all about. And before that, he gives a very beautiful background to what we actually have to understand with regard to literature. So he actually says, gives the shloka, he says, this is the first shloka I just chanted. He says, Apurvam yadvastu prathayati vina karana kalam jagat grava prakhyam nija rasa bharat sarayati cha kramat prakhyopakhya prasurasura bhagam bhasayati tat saraswatyas tattvam kavisahridayakhyam vijayate. I will explain this shloka and conclude my presentation. Next slide, please. So the poet makes a very beautiful contrast between actual creation that is brought into existence by Chaturmukha Brahma and the creation of a Kavi. So we all know that apare kavya samsare kavirekah prajapati. So in this world of Kavya, Kavi himself is the creator. But what is the difference between creation in reality and what is the difference between the creation of a poet? So in reality, even Brahma is an independent creator. He creates the world and all of us according to the law of karma. Similarly, he creates everything according to the nature of physics and metaphysics. Similarly, he cannot transcend the laws of time and space. For example, Brahma cannot ensure that a person lives forever, because everybody has to die one day. And similarly, no person can be brought back to life after he dies. So there are several laws. For example, an elephant cannot fly in the sky. A bird cannot, for some birds may not be able to swim. Or a human being cannot fly like a bird. So these are the constraints of Brahma, though he is independent in creation. But when we compare it to a Kavi or a poet, it is totally different. He is not bound by the laws of time. He is not bound by the laws of space. He is not bound by the laws of karma. For example, we may say that an elephant came flying Now, for example, in the Ramayana, we have Anjaneya who flies from one place to another 100 yojanas. So this is actually, in reality, whether it has happened or not, we will not go into that. But the great poet Valmiki has described it in a wonderful manner. So he defies the laws of physics. He defies the laws of metaphysics. He transcends space and time. So that's why he says, Apurvam yadvastu prathayati vina karana kalam. So the poet is such a great person who transcends all laws by which even the Brahma is bound. So the Kavi is greater than the poet. Secondly, he says, next slide please. Jagat grava prakyam nijarasam nijarasa bharat sarayati. Next slide please. So when we see this world from the point of view of nature, most of it is in the form of stones, etc., which has no rasa, which cannot be enjoyed at all. But what does the poet do? He transforms even the most unenjoyable stone-like creation into a most enjoyable entity by his immaculate capacity. So even a stone becomes full of juice that can be drunk. Even a stone flower will become a real flower by the transformation of a kavi or a poet. So he says, Jagat grava prakyam, this world which is akin to a stone will be transformed into something that can be beautifully enjoyed by the poet. And thirdly, he says one very important thing. There are two things that are, next slide please. There are two things that dictate the world of poetry. It is true to dance also. So there are two important aspects by which a poet actually describes what he knows. One is called prakhya and another is called upakhya. So what does a poet need to have in life? He has to have the inherent capacity to compose poetry. And secondly, what does he have? What does he need to have? He should be very well aware of all the laws of nature. Everything that is there in this world, that is known as upakhya. Only when these two are there in the poet really becomes a kavi. That is why in Sanskrit we say, kavihi krantadarshi. And in Kannada we say, Ravi Kanadanna Kavi Kanda. What is not known to the sun, who is Ravi, he is known to the Kavi, who is a poet. So he says, Kramat Prakhyopakhya Prasura Subhagam Bhasayati. And finally, he gives a beautiful verdict with regard to the entire Alankara Shastra or poetics when he says, Saraswatyas Tattvam Kavi Sahridayakhyam Vijayate. So there are two tattvas that define the goddess Saraswati. There are two tattvas. Saraswati in Sanskrit means literature. Saraswati in Sanskrit means language. And Saraswati also means goddess. So the epitome of all these three are two tattvas. One is called the Kavi and another is called the Sahridaya. So unless a poet describes something, the connoisseur or Sahridaya will not be able to enjoy the poetry. And similarly, the poet's works will become meaningful only when a person is there to enjoy. So for example, you are all students of this wonderful Kalakshetra. Suppose you are asked to dance in front of an empty audience. Will you get that inspiration? No. Similarly, a poet will get inspiration to write something only when there is a group of connoisseurs or Sahridayas who can enjoy the poetry. So without Sahridayas, the poet is useless. Without the poet, there is no subject matter for the Sahridayas or connoisseurs to enjoy. So there has to be two things. Both of these together constitute what is known as Saraswati. So he says, Saraswatyas Tattvam Kavi Sahridayakhyam Vijayate. So these two are the most important components for literature to arise. So there is a very beautiful shloka in Sanskrit. A great poet, he says, it's a very beautiful proclamation in the form of a shloka. He says, Itara papa shatani yathechaya, vitara tani sahe chaturanana, arasikeshu kavitva nivedanam, shirasi malika malika malika. The poet says, O Lord Brahma, you give me any punishment, I am ready to undergo that punishment. But don't give me that punishment where I have to tell my poetry to a person who doesn't know poetry at all, who cannot enjoy poetry at all. Any other punishment you can give me, I am ready to enjoy it. So here, when we see the greatness of Abhinava Gupta, there are two very important aspects. One is, to appreciate poetry also, you have to be a poet. Only a real poet can appreciate what poetry is. That is why in Sanskrit we say, Vidvaneva vijanati vidvajjana parishramam. Nahi vandhya vijanati guruvim prasava vedana. Only a real scholar will know what scholarship is. Non-scholars cannot actually measure scholarship. And a very beautiful example is given. A person who is barren, who has not given birth to children, she will never know what the pangs of giving birth is. So Abhinava Gupta is so great in this regard because he himself is an acclaimed poet. How many stotra works he has composed. And he knows the philosophy behind poetry because he is also a philosopher. And he knows how to practice that philosophy, which is what Tantra is all about. So philosophy is the theoretical portion, whereas Tantra is the practical portion where it is brought into practice. So he has authored several works that pertain to philosophy, that pertain to Tantra, then his own scholarship where he has excelled all other philosophers. So not only that is why we say when we talk about Kavya, we say it is of two types. Drishya Shravya Prabhedena Punah Kavyam Dvidhamatam. So Drishya Kavyas are the drama and also the Natya. So he has authored a beautiful work called Abhinava Bharati, which is a commentary of Natya Shastra. Then he has authored the Lochana, which is the commentary of Dhanyaloka. And then he has authored several poetic works, which are in the form of stotra also, where he has condensed. For example, once one of his students asked him, you please let me know the purport of entire Vedanta philosophy in 15 verses. So he has authored a stotra work, which is also a philosophical work, in only 15 verses. So to put in a nutshell an ocean of knowledge itself is a great talent. And today we talk about information compression, data compression, etc. But modern computer scientists don't know what knowledge compression is. So we talk about various stages, data, information, knowledge, and wisdom. So computer scientists have come only until knowledge compression. They have not even come until knowledge compression. They have come until only data compression and information compression. So data, when it is information, when it is refined, it becomes knowledge. And when knowledge is refined, it becomes wisdom. So what Abhinava Gupta has done from a modern viewpoint is, he has done wisdom compression by finishing in 15 shlokas the entire purport of Vedanta, which is like an ocean. That way, Abhinava Gupta's commentary is colossal. His contribution is colossal to the field of Indian literature and all genres of literature, like philosophical literature, Tantra literature, Stotra literature, and whatnot. So, next slide. So I am of the humble view that Sahitya Academy, if it has already not done, I don't know, it has to organize a series of seminars on the contribution of Abhinava Gupta only, because his literature is so huge, it may run into thousands of pages, and it's also so profound. So that will be a very fitting tribute to Abhinava Gupta. And with these words, I thank the organizers, Professor Srinivas Rao ji and Sri Raj Mohan ji, a childhood friend of mine, who called me to inform me that I should talk about Abhinav Gupta. I don't know whether I'm qualified enough to talk about this because basically I am not a student of Alankara Shastra. But with the, I hope I have fulfilled the expectations of the organizers. I also thank the Kalakshetra Foundation for this wonderful opportunity because the atmosphere itself is awe-inspiring. Such a beautiful, I have never seen such a beautiful auditorium, which is so traditional and at the same time so modern. So I am indebted to all the listeners for their active and very interactive listening. I thank you all once again, and Abhinav Gupta Namo Namah.
Thank you very much, Alvar. Alvar mentioned that Sahitya Academy is best of the academies. That is so because we are always been blessed with and been associated with wonderful scholars like Alvar. Not now, for 39, 40 years I am seeing any subject, anything you tell, with the clarity and purpose, Alvar always, and he said knowledge compression. He's the one who just opens up everything for us, and then he's 1,000 Derridas put in one place, in one human body. Yeah. Now the next person, next speaker will be Advaita Vadini Kaul. She will speak on Buddhism and Kashmir.
माया कुंडलिनी क्रिया मदमती काली कला मालिनी मातंगी विजया जया भगवती देवी शिवा शांभवी शक्ति शंकर वल्लभा त्रिनयना वाक्वादिनी भैरवी ह्रींकारी त्रिपुरा परा परमयी माता कुमारी तसिंह. After invoking Goddess Shakti in her different names, I offer my pranams to the chair and my co-panelists, the audience in which I see Professor Srinivas Rao ji, Professor Ratanlal Hanglu ji, Madam Garyali ji, Agni Shekhar ji, Gauri Shankar ji, Professor Mishra from JNU, Satyabama ji, Megha, my friends, and I'm sorry I cannot count all the names, but I feel overwhelmed to be a part of this Kashmir event concentrated on Vitasta, the mother goddess Vitasta. I'm grateful to Sahitya Academy for inviting me to be a part of this event, and so personally grateful to Sri Rao ji. He has been always so kind. And happening it in Kalakshetra makes it all the more significant because Kalakshetra, you see this Prekshagraha. I see the living connect between Kashmir and Kalakshetra. This Kalakshetra, you know, is constructed according to the instructions of Nati Shastra and what Abhinav Gupta has explained how it should be. So we really rarely find such places. So we feel so overwhelmed to be here. And I should say I had the honor of being here exactly 6 years ago when I organized one of the 4 conferences on Acharya Abhinav Gupta. So I am again here, and today I am being asked to speak on Buddhism in Kashmir. So here I have prepared a PPT. There is so much to speak on Kashmir. You have experienced it since yesterday, be it lectures or the performances. And we as Kashmiris feel so overwhelmed and overjoyed. And it gives us the opportunity to meet our friends from Kashmir also here. So it is very special event for all of us. So the Buddhist literary heritage of Kashmir. Next. Please move to next slide. The philosophical ideas emerging from India have influenced art and literature of Asia. And in India, Kashmir has emerged as a center of intellectual activities. Kashmir maintained its role for a very long time. The nature has bestowed upon Kashmir the serene atmosphere and the bounties of nature have blessed this land with, in producing brilliant minds. The philosophers, rhetoricians, historians, and the scholars, experts in different fields of knowledge have emerged from Kashmir. The achievements of all these scholars have added immensely to the growth of Indian culture. Kashmir became a very important center for disseminating Indian culture to Central Asia, China, Mongolia, Tibet, Korea, Japan, and many other lands in South and Southeast Asia, mainly through the expansion of Buddhism. Next. Emerging as the center of rigorous intellectual activities, the names of great scholars associated with Buddhist philosophy and the Mahayanist outlook, like Ashwagosha, Nagarjuna, and Vasubandhu, we find them at some point of their activities having stayed in Kashmir and studied along with others, studied or introspected or debated with eminent scholars of Kashmir. The Mool Sarvastivada records the Buddha's forecast to Vajrapani that Madhyantika, a disciple of Ananda, would pass on his religion in Kashmir, the land of blue forests, and that he would subdue the Malolus Kaluna Naga and extend the seat on which he would sit cross-legged to miraculously cover the whole of Kashmir and making the vast country of 60,000 villages an abode for meditating monks. This is from the Bashaj Guru Sukta found in the Gilgit manuscripts. Embellished with the legendary colorings, this description finds unanimity in Pali, Sanskrit, Chinese, and Tibetan sources in attributing the introduction of Buddhism in Kashmir to Arhat Madhyantika or Madhyantika, a direct disciple of Ananda. Next. The following statement in connection with the recent discoveries signify the role of Kashmir. I quote, that Kashmir and northwestern area of peninsular India have played an extraordinary important role in the history of South and Central Asian Buddhism in noting that is nothing that would stand in need of proof. Recent discoveries, such as the Buddhist scrolls from Gandhara, which are in the British Library, and a considerable number of Buddhist manuscripts from Bamiyan, now in the Norwegian collection, to mention only the most spectacular finds, fully tally with the known facts. In influential scholastic traditions, such as the Moola Sarvastivada, an enormous number of great scholars and a high standard of learning have always been considered a hallmark of Kashmiri Buddhism right until the beginning of the second millennium AD. Next. The development of Mahayana. From Madhya Desha, where the teachings of the Buddha found its first audience among the general masses during the lifetime of the and the immediately after Buddhism, afterwards, Buddhism thereafter reached out in the direction of Mathura and Kashmir through the first missionary activities. Both Mathura and Kashmir were the centers of two powerful cults of Hinduism. Also, the serene atmosphere of Kashmir is said to have been praised by the Buddha himself. In the Samyukta Nikaya, the Buddha is represented as saying that Kashmir is the best land for meditation and for leading a religious life. The learned Pandits, imbued with the spirit of tolerance and ever ready to investigate and learn every new idea or thought, received the Buddhist canon with which is revered as Tripitaka with great respect. Next. After critical and analytical studies, they gave it a new interpretation suiting the time and the aspirations of the people. Thus, Mahayana, the great vehicle, was developed further as the result of the contemplating mind. The earlier form known as Theravada, we should not say Hinayana because that is a misnomer. So it is called as Theravada, laid emphasis on an individual's self-efforts for personal upliftment. But to the saints and scholars of Kashmir who were deeply learned in more subtle and higher philosophies, this doctrine seemed incapable of keeping the masses attached to it for long. Therefore, while coming into contact with masterminds, the simple creed of early Buddhism got permeated with their refined ritualistic and philosophical teachings. Next. The philosophy developed chiefly on the lines of the Sarvastivada, that is, realistic school, belonging to the Theravada, and Kashmir was the stronghold of this school in northern India. Nagarjuna, a contemporary of Kanishka, is known as the founder of the Madhyamika school of Buddhist thought. Kalhana mentions one Nagarjuna who resided at Shadarhadvana, modern Harvan in Kashmir. Later, the great Buddhist scholars of India, Asanga and Vasubandhu, both came to Kashmir. They stayed here and did further studies by exchanging ideas with the scholars of Kashmir. Thus was laid the foundation of the third branch that is known as Vijnanavada, holding that all phenomena is illusion. In other words, it is nothing but thought or idea. Next. This is the Buddhist site which is referred as Shad Arhadvana, and today we know this as Harvan. Next. Although the Buddhist doctrine had been carried to China through Indian missionaries early in the 2nd century of Common Era, but it could not take firm roots there at that time. However, it was later that Mahayana, on gaining strength and popularity, then attaining the status of the state religion, was carried to Central Asia, China, with great success. The Kashmiri scholars and monks played a great role in the dissemination of the Buddhist role around this period, both at home and in the neighboring countries. The interesting aspect of this development is that we get this information from foreign sources. According to the Chinese tradition, Vibhasha Shastra denotes a commentary or discussion on the Abhidharma treatises, that is the Sarvastivada Abhidharma. According to the Chinese tradition, this treatise was composed chiefly by Kashmiri masters, those who were attached to this school, that is Sarvastivada school. These masters have been referred to in Chinese sources as Vibhasha-shi or as Kashmir-shi. Next. Now we will concentrate on Kumar Jiva so that we get an idea how the scholars were ingrained in the knowledge. It was not specifically Buddhism only, or a particular school of Buddhism. The renowned Buddhist scholar Kumar Jiva's biographical details are based on two Chinese works. One is the collection of the records of the translation of the Tripitaka, and another is Lives of Early Buddhist Monks, compiled in 519 CE. The details that are available in these Chinese sources provide the clues that make it possible to reconstruct certain links. First is his biographical link, and these sources record that his father was from a royal family of Kashmir, but we are not able to identify this royal family due to the lack of sufficient sources from the other side. Kumarayana, the father of Kumar Jiva, on renouncing the world, became a monk and proceeded to Kucha in Central Asia. Next. Here he later got married to the princess of Kucha named Jiva. A son born to this couple was given the name Kumar Jiva by combining the names of his parents. Soon after Kumar Jiva's birth, his mother became a nun. She herself took the charge of the upbringing of her son. Kumar Jiva received the first training in Buddhist lore in the monasteries of Kucha. Thereafter, his mother brought Kumar Jiva to Kashmir for further studies. Therefore, this points at the significance of Kashmir as a center of acquiring higher knowledge. In Kashmir, Kumar Jiva studied the Tripitaka and other Theravada texts thoroughly under the teacher named Bandhu Datta. Next. Having memorized Samyukta Pitaka Sutra and Madhyamagama and Dirghagama, his sharp memory won for him the respect of his teachers. Kumar Jiva also received the favor from the king of Kashmir, who appointed 5 monks and 10 novices at his service. After his 3-year stay in Kashmir for acquiring the higher knowledge, Kumar Jiva left back for Kucha along with his mother. In between, they stopped at Kashgar. Here, Kumar Jiva got to study Sarvastivada Abhidharma with Buddha Yashas, again a renowned Abhidharma teacher of Kashmir. He also studied Ekotaragama Sutra here. Most importantly, Kumar Jiva is reported to have studied extensively the 4 Vedas, 5 sciences, and the allied subjects. Next. In Kashgar itself, Kumar Jiva got introduced by one Surya Soma to the Mahayana doctrine. In this way, Kumar Jiva made a thorough study of the Madhyamika treatises. Here, it draws our attention to one Surya Soma or Surya Sena, who is also referred to as the disseminator of Nagarjuna's theory in Kashmir. However, it remains to be examined if both were the same. Being impressed by the Mahayana doctrine, Kumar Jiva returned to Kashmir to explain the inner meaning of Ekayana to his teacher, Bandhu Datta, in great detail. Bandhu Datta, realizing the truth, submitted to Kumar Jiva by saying, I was your teacher for teaching you the Theravada texts, and now you are my teacher on Mahayana. This is the greatness of our culture. This speaks volumes of the level of introspection between the great minds, interaction between the great minds and introspection. Finally, on his return to Kucha, Kumar Jiva was introduced to Sarvastivada Vinaya by yet another Kashmiri master, Vimalaksha. All these details help us to understand how Kumar Jiva acquired great proficiency in almost all branches of Buddhist learning, and thus his fame spread far and wide. Later, when Kumar Jiva was in China, engaged as Rajguru there. He came to know about the arrival of his Guru Vimalaksha. He was overjoyed and he paid due respect to his teacher. So it is not only acquiring knowledge, it is we have to imbibe, we have to practice these values. This we get from his biography. Next. So these are the two monuments from the time of Kumarjiva in Kashgar. The left one is Mole Pagoda, and the right one are the ruins there. Next. Development of Buddhist lore in China. So you can see what was Kumarjiva's contribution in this. Kumarjiva devoted himself to the spreading of Buddhist teachings with the thorough knowledge of all branches of learning. He translated the Buddhist sutras in Chinese by becoming the chief of the translation bureau, to which a large number of Indian and Chinese associates were attached. Here also a large number of monks and scholars from Kashmir were associated with Kumarjiva. Punyatrata, Buddha Yashas, and Vimalaksha were the most prominent amongst them all. Kumarjiva's translations of some of the fundamental Mahayana texts are noteworthy. These include Sutralankar Shastra of Ashwagosha, Dashbhumi Vibhasha Shastra of Nagarjuna, Shat Shastra of Arideva, and Tattvasiddhi Shastra of Harivarman. Next. Satyasiddhi, Tattvasiddhi, or Bhutasiddhi is known as one of the 10 schools of Chinese Buddhism. This school is based on the Satyasiddhi Shastra that was composed by Harivarman in Kashmir around 3rd, 4th century of Common Era. Regretting the wrong interpretations, Harivarman made an attempt to return to the basic tenets of the real teachings through the composition of this Shastra. This Shastra became the source of knowledge and inspiration. Unfortunately, the original text written in Sanskrit is lost, but fortunately so, the Chinese translation of the text is available, and this is done by Kumarjiva. Kumarjiva's translation is the only existing version of this text. Next. So great has been the impact of this Shastra in China that Kumarjiva is said to have established a school based on this Shastra. It was from here that the same school was also introduced in Korea and Japan. It is said that the 6 principles of Chinese painting are based on this Shastra. This is a very interesting observation and invites further research in the direction of tracing the links with the Nati Shastra of Bharata, and that has been very much rooted in Kashmir. Indian tradition can be compared with an open stream of continuous flow on the part of realizing the ultimate human goal. Kumarjiva was one of the illuminating torch bearers of this illustrious tradition. He imbibed knowledge from many Kashmiri masters, not only in Kashmir, that was considered a very important seat of learning, but he studied under many Kashmiri teachers outside in foreign lands, and where they had already reached following their mission of spreading the message of Buddha for human upliftment. Next. There are many notices of Kashmiri associates working with Kumarjiva in China. The bio-note details recorded in the biographies of Kumarjiva, the renowned Buddhist philosopher and seer, uncover some of the lost links that Kumarjiva had in Kashmir. In this connection, the following quote makes it more significant. I quote, "The translations which Kumarjiva directed at Chengan, and still more the personal comments sometimes therein mingled, contribute in an interesting manner towards acquiring us with the state of Buddhism in Kashmir in the 4th century, for it is his personal Buddhism, all impregnated with yet with the teaching of his Kashmiri masters, that the Kuchian used to comment upon in front of his Chinese listeners," unquote. Next. This is the image of the fragment from Buddhist text in Kuchian, the mother tongue of Kumarjiva. Next. And this is the white horse stupa built in commemoration of the horse who brought Kumarjiva to Tunhang, and the moment he reached here and he died. Next. So something about, if I have time? I think so, yes. Kashmir's contribution in Tibet, because Buddhism reached Tibet after some time, around 7th century AD. Buddhism reached Tibet much later than it reached Central Asia and China. Because of mainly geographical reason, intense cold and difficult barren terrain, it was very difficult to get into China. Even writing in Tibetan began later, sometime during the 7th century. During this time, the ruler of Tibet, Trongsan Gampo, conceived the idea of reducing spoken Tibetan to a system of alphabetic writing to facilitate the coming of Buddhism from India. He deputed a Tibetan named Thomi Sambota to India to learn writing and adapt it to the notation of the Tibetan language. Some texts, particularly Bhutan's history and annals of Ladakh, state that Thomi came to Kashmir. Next. It was 7th century onwards that Kashmiri scholars began to visit Tibet and thereby marking the significance of the radiation of Kashmiri Buddhism. Like the Chinese collections, the entire Sanskrit Tripitaka is preserved in Tibetan collections. These collections also contain a vast literature that was translated from various Indian sources. It includes commentaries and exegetical texts which are otherwise lost in original form. They also include dictionaries which were compiled to facilitate the translations. The role of Kashmiri scholars has been immense in building up these collections. The Tibetan Buddhist collection known as Kanjur opens with Dulva, meaning Vinaya. This is the translation of the Mula Sarvastivada Vinaya of Kashmir. A portion of this was discovered in the Gilgit manuscripts. The Kashmiri scholars Sarvajna Mitra, Dharmakara, and Janamitra took leading part in translating Vinaya Shastra. Next. It was possibly for this significant enterprise that Janamitra and Sarvajna Mitra received the pompous title of Arya Mula Sarvastivada Vinayadhara Kashmira Vaibhashikacharya, this long title. Abhidharma Kosha had a wide circulation in Tibet as well. It was translated with numerous commentaries during the early period of the introduction of Buddhism in Tibet. Kashmiri scholars Janamitra translated both Abhidharma Kosha Karika and Abhidharma Kosha Bhasha of Vasubandhu into Tibetan. Another Kashmiri scholar, Kanakavarman, translated Lakshananusarani, the commentary of the Abhidharma Kosha. Next. This is the beautiful folio from Avadana Kalpalata of Kshemendra, written in bilingual Tibetan and Devanagari. It is preserved in Kashmir University. There we have the collection of Oriental studies. Next. In the Mahayana Buddhism were included various forms of mysticism known as Vajrayana, Kalachakrayana, Sahajayana, etc. A symbolic language came in use in this form. This form introduced the cult of many gods and goddesses by whose favor the devotees were expected to attain Siddhi. A Kashmiri Tantric Buddhist during 8th century had attained the Siddhi of goddess Tara, the female aspect of Bodhisattva. The goddess had bestowed on him a stotra. The 7 works of Ravi Gupta are all dedicated to Tara. Next. Sarvajna Mitra was a disciple of Ravi Gupta. He composed 4 hymns in praise of Tara. Among these, Srigdhara Stotra is very well-known hymn in 37 verses. There are 3 Tibetan translations available of this hymn and 1 commentary also. a Kashmiri nun during 10th century, expounded the detailed exposition of the cycle of Mahakarunika, that is Avalokiteshvara. There are 5 works by Lakshmi in Tibetan, and all 5 are dedicated to Avalokiteshvara. Somanatha, another Kashmiri tantric of 11th century, had obtained scholarship on Kalachakra, and he preached this system in Tibet. There is a large number of Kashmiri Buddhists preserved in Tibetan sources. So, next. So these are the 2 images. One is of, on the left, Avalokiteshvara, and right, Tara, supposed to be done by Kashmiri artists. Next. The review presented here shows that Kashmir played a prominent role in the transmission of Buddhist learning through her learned scholars in Kashmir, as well as in the lands across the boundaries. Kashmir was the chief center of Buddhist learning from about the beginning of Common Era. It was through Kashmir that India was connected with Central Asia, China, and Tibet. Kashmiri scholars contributed to the greatness of and importance of place in the history of Buddhism and gave new shape to the declining creed by making it more popular and vibrating among the masses, and by involving intellectual enterprise in its further development. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Advaitavadini Kaul. And Buddhist heritage in Kashmir is not very well known outside Kashmir. In fact, I was talking to Dr. Revati Ramachandran in between the sessions, and I was telling you, you forgot to mention Anibesant. So the connection with Kalakshetra is through theosophy, and for them the Tibet and Buddhism, Tibetan Buddhism especially, that is through the book of Xian, is the connection is made. And Rukmini Devi Arundel, I don't know how many people know, I was just recalling all these things with Dr. Revati, that she performed one from that. So it's a Buddhist nun, Bhikshuki, so that's basically derived from the, not Tibet itself, but Kashmir. I mean, I don't know, so many things, you know, once you come that, I think these are the things that have to be brought into for the awareness of masses. Now, next is our friend Ajaz Muhammad Sheikh. He will present on Islam and Kashmir.
Obama Razdan, in whose feet I have learned a lot, Agni Shekhar ji, Goli ji, and many others. Everybody is distinguished, so I will try to be brief. I have already been sort of told by the chairman, limit yourself to 15 minutes. Once I got the topic, it was Islam. So it was a bit puzzling to see what Islam, and then I talked to the concerned persons at the Sahitya Academy, and I decided that I will give a brief about Islamic contribution to religious literature. The theme, I'm not touching the philosophical, but religious literature of Kashmir. Please move ahead. So meanwhile, they will set and I will move ahead. And it has been talked about right from the beginning that I believe one unique feature Kashmir has is that it has been abode of 3 great religions of the world: Buddhism, then Hinduism, and then Islam. And I personally feel that the culture, composite culture we have, all have got a contribution in that. And the learned scholar just now was talking about Buddhism. I'm not going to touch that. I will leave. Please move ahead. At least 10 slides. Further. Yes, further. One more. Just wait. Yeah, now see, I will start with the arrival of Islam to Kashmir. With arrival of Islam, the linguistic landscape also got changed because you got two very dominant languages, Arabic and Persian coming in. Arabic as a religious language, and then Persian, we know that it became the official language and it was the administrative language for many centuries. And that somehow changed the linguistic scenario of the valley. And it also affected the literature, philosophy, as well as the literary genre of Kashmir. Now, what happens is that, please move ahead. These are not relevant. Then after Persian, we know that in 1888, it was Maharaja Pratap Singh who made Urdu as the official language of undivided Jammu and Kashmir, and then it was ratified by the Constituent Assembly also. So these, if you see, when we talk about the religious literature of Kashmir, we have to take into consideration Arabic, Persian, and Urdu, and their contribution. But I will limit myself to only Kashmiri later. Although we have got many, you can say, scholars who have contributed to religious literature as far as Persian is concerned, as far as Urdu is concerned. Any Kashmiri comes to mind, Sarfi comes to mind, please move ahead. And in Urdu also, we have got many scholars who have, yes, who have contributed to religious literature of Kashmir. Besides this linguistic scenario, along with mainly through Persian, and I can say if something from Arabic, something directly, but mostly through Persian, indirectly, we got some the literary genres also in Kashmir. For example, Ghazal, Masnavi, Qasida, Rubai, and Marsiya. These came along with Kashmir. And then you have got, although you can't treat them as separate genre, Hamd and Manajat, but you can say that they are somehow addition to the religious literature of Kashmir. Personally, I would prefer to call it as devotional literature because, next slide please. As a nation, I believe, and as a student of linguistics, I have seen that we are somehow faith-loving. Kashmiris, I mean all the communities. We trust each other's, we join each other's festivals, and even there is a theory in linguistics, what we call as Sapir-Whorf hypothesis, which says that your belief system or your perception of the world is reflected in your own language. Sorry, they have missed the language. I want to give some expression my Kashmiri friends will understand. You see, you have got the expression in English, it rains, or barish ho rahi hai. But Kashmiri, you see, you have got rood wolun, sheen wolun, obur kholun. So if you go for linguistic analysis, there is some agent involved. Now, who is that agent? That is the God, that is the Lord. So we have that, I can say it is somehow inherent belief system in our society, which is reflected in the language also. Then coming to the genres, I can say that even in our folk literature, we have got this faith is reflected. For example, when we say the Vanun, traditional Vanun songs, we start with, please move ahead. One more, just. When we start the marriage ceremonies, so we start with Bismillah Kairit Hamo Vanuvoni. And in Pandit marriages, I don't remember Shoklam Moinit Hamo Vanuvoni. So the system, that belief system is reflected in our traditional folk literature also. That's what I want to highlight. In that sense, I call that devotional literature has been present in folk literature also. Please move ahead. Now coming to early period, it has been talked about Lala Ded, and you can't say it, Lala Ded and Sheikhul Alam, two towering personalities which we have in Kashmiri as far as literature is concerned, as well as the devotional literature is concerned. Although it is a Muslim contribution, but I won't skip Lala, I will take her this walk. Next slide. Shivchum Thali Thali Rozan. I will just have my Sanskrit scholars are here. I have some other interpretation also. I have written oblique, Shivchum Thali Thali Rao. Rauzan, and Shivchum Thali Thali Rozan. I take it as both ways because it is open-ended. I may be wrong. Mauzan Hyunt Musalman. My friend was saying, but I am not sure about is it but or is it Muslim written there. Trukai Chuk the Panun Pan Parzanao, Soiche Saibas Zani Zan. Shiva God. Now, if you take it Rozan, he resides everywhere, he pervades everywhere. But in Sanskrit, we have got Ravi, sun. So we can take it perhaps in that, I am not sure it amounts then to that what in Islam is the Wahdatul Wujud concept, that the Lord pervades in everything. His light radiates from everywhere. So both the possibilities are there. Shiva God spreads light everywhere, or Shiva is omnipresent. Don't differentiate between Hindu and Muslim. If you are wise, know yourself. Mu'arifat, what Islam is saying, that is how you can recognize the Lord. Then coming to next slide, the poetry of Sheikhul Alam, it is widely regarded as he was the disciple of Lal Ded, and popularly his poetry is known as Kashmiri Quran. He also conveyed the message of Quran, but overall, you can say he also conveyed what the philosophical, you can say, thoughts which had pervaded in Kashmir right from Buddhism and Shaivism. And he also talked about equality, he talked about human brotherhood. For example, he says, Akuichi Khoda Nao Chuslacha. There is only one God, but it has got millions of names. Zikri Ruska Kachamu. Umar Vandun Akui Pacha Rizkurus Ak Machamu. So first, if you see Akuichi Khoda, he talks about that there is only one Lord, one God, and it has got different names, Ram, Rahim, etc. God is one with millions of names. Not a straw of grass is devoid of God's remembrance. Consider your age equal to a fortnight. No fly is left without food. Next slide. Now he talks also about the transient nature of the world. Talachi is justai petchuk nazan. Vantamale vandakitha pachan chui. Azabi kabras kon chukwazan. Vantamale anketha razan chui. You are dancing with a bottomless pit under your feet. Oh dear, how dare you do this? Why don't you fear the punishment of grave? Oh dear, how does your food get digested? Next slide. Now, one of the common, you can say, dominant themes in poetry, Kashmiri religious poetry, devotional poetry after Islam is what is called as Hamd and Manajat. Hamd means praising the Lord, and Manajat is a part of Hamd, but it also is where you supplicate also, while you pray also, while you entreat also. Next slide, please. Next slide, there is a lot of material is present right from, you can say even the Masnavis is present in this Hamd and Manajat form. But compiled form, there are only 2 books, I don't touch them. Next, please move. Next one. Yes, some examples of Hamd where you praise the Lord, the poet praise the Lord. I will start with Sheikhul Alam, same which I have quoted above. Akuichu Khoda Nao Chuslacha Zikri Ruska Kachamu. God is one with millions of names, not a straw of grass is devoid of God's remembrance. Next, there are many examples. I won't discuss them. Yes, next. Further. Yes, I will touch about this, the Natya poetry. It means simply that Naat is that poetic form where you praise the Prophet of Islam. And in technical sense, you can't say it is a separate genre as like the ghazal, it has got that form or something like that. People have used different genres, maybe nazm, maybe ghazal, maybe rubais to praise the Prophet. Next slide. And starting with Sheikhul Alam, I will take his shruk. He has used his own shruk form. Awal Alif Kuni Allah, Awal Peta Akar Zawal Natas, Bego Muhammad Rasul Allah, Qayamas Shafat Kariumatas. First is Alif, the only Allah. He has no decline from beginning to the end. Be is Muhammad, Be means letter. Prophet of Allah, he will intercede in the hereafter. Next slide. Yes, again from Sheikhul Alam. Per legzi tas pagambaras, yendis doras rahmat chajari, Kaal yel haq lagi roz mahsharas taskun wamedwar asan sari. Keep that prophet dear, whose age is full of mercy or bounty. When accountability will take place on that day, everyone will crave for his help. Next slide, I have given names of many poets who have written naats in praise of the prophet. Next slide. These are all the names. One thing I want to touch here is that regarding the naat and hamd, that I see as a student of linguistics, the local color, the local imagery, and the local metaphors have been used in description of the Lord as well as the Prophet Muhammad. And one more thing which makes it different, my friends know here from Kashmir, that in Kashmir they are sung in the mosques loudly, the loud recitation, oral recitation, which is not found in most parts of the world. So they recite them in home or something like that. But here we recite them loudly after the obligatory prayers. So that makes it different. In one sense, there is that, that's why the rhythmic element, the musicality is visible in these type of naats. One, I will take this example from, yes. No, first one. Next. Yeah. You see, Sanawala Kriri has been a very famous poet. Now see, again, there is one more thing which is found in the naats also, that they entreat, they request the Prophet, they sort of ask him for favors, for bliss. Hawawu watak na tutu yeti daftra with Mustafa. Awal myoni tasvanak suiho karim dadin dawa. Now the translation goes like, O wind, go to the place where the Prophet rests. Narrate my pain, narrate my story to him. He will provide me cure to my illness. Next, I have to skip because there are many slides. One more thing is that there are many women poets also who have written naats. Naseem Shipai is there, Rukhsana Jabin is there. I will be skipping those also. Yes, I will touch about this. Mir Ghulam Rasul Nazki has been a very famous poet. He has been a broadcaster, academician from Kashmir. And he has used one typical genre, that is rubai, quatrains, for the, you can say, description and praise of Prophet. Now I will give one of the rubais, Muhammad Bekasan Hund Kas Muhammad, Diluk Aram Ruhu Kras Muhammad, Najati Chai Kuni Wat, Rati Hai Wat, Muhammad Bas Muhammad Bas Muhammad. Muhammad is a patron to those who have none to patronize. He is solace to the heart and food to the soul. Follow the only path to salvation, Muhammad, only Muhammad, only Muhammad. Please, next. Yeah, then the Marsiya poetry. Marsiya is simply, you see, the condolence of the death, about the death of the grandson of Prophet. Especially it is celebrated by, although Sunnis also celebrate, but especially celebrated by the Shia Muslims, particularly for the first 10 days of the Islamic calendar, Muharram. And this genre has also got a huge, it is said that it existed right from Lal Ded's time. Some specimens have been cited that which somehow show Marsiya form from Lal Ded. And from that on, you will see that during, please next move ahead. I have quoted Sayyid Akhtar Mansoor. He says that in written form, some elegies on individuals are reported from time of Lal Ded. But the Marsiya in terms of the, you can say, incident of Karbala, that comes only from the time of Shahmiri period, Shahmiri, Czech period, and then the Mughal period. Next slide, please. I have classified them into 3 periods. First period, it starts from 1392 to 1555. Second period, 1555 to 1819. And third period, 1819 till date. There are many poets next, which I have mentioned. Yes, this I would love to touch about. One of the, you can say, in which we have got enough literature, wealth of literature is mystic poetry or the Sufic poetry. It is a whole, it is, you can say, vast domain. I can't touch it, but briefly I will touch something about it, that Kashmir has a splendid legacy of mystic poetry. It has been home to famous saints, peers, and rishis, and is commonly known as Rishwar, that is abode of rishis. No wonder that Kashmir Valley has produced a galaxy of famous mystic poets, which include Lal Ded, Sheikhul Alam, Wahab Khar, Swashkral, Samad Mir, to name a few. Next. On reading the mystic poetry of Kashmiri, it becomes obvious that while portraying their mystic experiences, the Kashmiri mystic Sufi poets have quite successfully exploited the linguistic resources available to them. They have utilized the linguistic resources at their disposal very deftly and have chiseled the material very artistically. Their poetry is full of musicality, rhythm, and rhyme, and is very soothing to the ears. During the study of the mystic poetry of Kashmiri, one finds innumerable examples falling in the above discussed domain, ranging from simple, straightforward expressions to very complex and vague expressions. The Kashmiri mystic poetry is replete with expressions full of symbolism and imagery. One can also find expressions which seem to be totally out of sync with the material world or the physical world, which if you see the real world experience, they seem, these are somehow ambiguous. What are they saying? Next slide, please. Quite obviously, the mystic poetry is not always vague or ambiguous. It does contain many examples where the poets have used simple and straightforward expressions also to communicate their ideas. Consider some examples in this regard. Adzargar's famous couplet, Osh Osum Lolchi Kathabavan, Joshi Darunto Birum Praznavan. Whale was teaching me the stories of love and helping me to recognize the vigor of the inner and the outer. Next. Or Laldes this Kusmari to Kasumaran, Mari Kustai Maran Kas, Yus Haratravit, Gargar Kari, Adusui Mare to Maran Tas. Who is to die and who they can kill? Who can kill and who is to die? One who forgets God for the sake of the earth is sure to die and be killed. Next. Now, imagery forms one of the choicest devices used by Kashmiri mystic poets to convey the desired meaning. Consider the below given examples. Talashu is justai petchuk natsan, vantamali vandakitha pachan chui. You are dancing with a bottomless pit under your feet. Oh dear, how dare you do this? Next slide, please. The wonderful imagery of a person dancing and enjoying in a reverie, unconscious of the fact that a bottomless and deep trench or pit lies under his feet, has been used to depict the transient nature of the worldly life, a dominant theme in the mystic poetry. Also consider the below given example of Ahadzargar. Trata eshkini barsar pan hovnas, grata kodnas parinis chanovnas, gata gumshud anwar panololo. The lightning and thunder of love I had to bear on my head. He made me pass through the grinders of flour mill and sifted me. Then the darkness vanished and light showered on me. Next, please. Yes, I would love to touch this. In consonance with poetic license, poets quite often produce linguistically deviant and semantically anomalous expressions in their poetry. Consider the below given example. Chukyanai karith kya nasral, wuchum kya nai medidantal. Nothing is mixed with nothing. I saw nothing in front of my eyes. A common reader may take it as meaningless expression, as one can't fathom how one can add nothing to nothing. The example has been taken from Ahadzargar's poem, which is itself titled as Vuchum Kyahnai, I saw nothing. It is pertinent to mention that the whole poem uses the via negative approach for the expression of the reality. This via negative approach has been used very frequently by Kashmiri mystic poets. The below given example can also be provided in this regard. Now move ahead, please. Just one or two things. No, one slide before. Yeah. This. You can move ahead. You come to the interfaith relations. Yes. Kashmir has been famous for cordial relations that existed between the two communities, especially Muslims and Hindus, having faith and reverence for each other's festivals, holy places, etc. Muslims took part in Herat. I personally have taken part and visited Tulmula shrine also. Hindus would today also visit Hazrat Bal, Dasgir Sahib shrines. It is even reflected through religious literature. Many Hindu poets have written very beautiful naats also. In the anthology of naats I have mentioned it above, written by Dr. Aziz Hajni, and which was published by Sahitya Academy, he has given specimens of 4 Kashmiri Pandit poets: Dinanath Nadim, very famous, Pitambarnath Darfani, Premnath Shad, and Prithvinath Kol Sahib. One example I will take from Nadim. Dua salam t'ush sawab jabro kabul, Kashir Sani Reshut, Tuot, Fakhri Hubbi Rasul. Prayers, greetings, blessings, bliss, give and take. Kashmir loves Rishism and takes pride in loving the Prophet. From Pitambarnath Fani, he says, Khoshro Khoshdil Adam Adam, Nairuz Fikr, Nairud Gam, Registanan Full Gulibadam, Zavir Paigambar Azam. Beautiful, warm-hearted human, no anxiousness, no sorrow. The almond flowers bloomed in the desert when the great prophet was born. Next slide, please. Now, besides the Muslim contribution, when you come to the, you can say, message, even the Muslim poets, they have also highlighted the message of love and humanity. I will end with that. You see Mahjur writing, Mashidan Mandaran, Girjan Dharam Salan Ta Astanan, Yeman Yitan Garan As Atnuk, Kuni Darwaz Thawun Chum. Mosques, temples, churches, dharamshalas, and monasteries. For all these houses, I have to keep a single door. Next slide, please. And Sheikhul Alam, Akis Malis Majihinden, Dilan Dui Travit Kyai, Musalmanan Kya Wahinden, Kar Bandan Toshi Khodai. Of the same parents, why have you sowed hatred in their hearts, Muslims as well as Hindus? When shall Lord be pleased with them? I will conclude with this couplet of poet of Kashmir. He is called as poet of Kashmir, Mahjur. Dochu Muslim Hunchu Shakar, Saf Saf, Dot Be Shakar Alayu Panwain. Milk is Muslim and Hindu is sugar. Mix the milk and sugar together. Thank you.
Now I request Satish Vimalji to present his views on Kashmir Saivism.
It's very difficult to be the last speaker because the patience has gone out. People are tired. I'll begin with Rabindranath Tagore's quote, my favorite poet. Kashmir Shaivism has penetrated to the depths of living thought where currents of human wisdom unite in luminous synthesis. Kashmir, the valley which is now known for many things other than the deep secret buried or hidden under its very appearance, that is a word which broadly or loosely covers the rivers and oceans of dynamic explorations into the mysteries of life or the mystery of the universal dynamism. All these rivers of exploration are seen to merge at one point, that is referred to Shiva, the ultimate. The word ism used here may wrongly denote a set of beliefs to be followed or a set of rituals to be adopted to land in some fanatical delusion or hallucination, as is the intention of the suffix ism applied to anything that was not in line with the Western approach or Western way of things. while the whole search of exploring the mystery had a final goal of finding some aphorisms and commandments. Kashmir Shaiva Darshan is really the non-dualistic Shaivism, which must really be called Kashmir Shaiva Darshan or Shaivite philosophy instead of Kashmir Shaivism. It's not just confined to the geography of Kashmir. This non-dualistic philosophy has great teachers like Vasugupta, Abhinavgupta, Kshemaraja, Swami Lakshmanju, who all belonged to Kashmir and gave us the blessings of Lord Shiva through their explorations and writings. Though in no certain terms it has to be acknowledged that most of the literature related to Kashmir Shaiva Darshana nowadays owes its existence to the valiant explorers and genuine seekers from the West, but the mainstream academia of the West has always remained confined to their defined structures and had been somewhat uncomfortable with the ideas and explorations which challenge the set norms of their academic parameters. Their discomfort to open-ended views and philosophies of East has led to many confusions and misinterpretations in the game of great exploration. To understand what we call Kashmir Shaiva Darshana, one needs to get rid of the preconceived notions of seeking a belief system, defined set of traditions, rituals, commandments, or a set of exercises to revive one's dead chakras. Kashmir Shaiva Darshan is definitely a tradition being nurtured by the greats like Abhinavgupta, Lalleshwari, and the revered Swami Lakshmanju, but this is a dynamic and live tradition. And to know about it, just understanding of words is not enough. One needs an insight enough to hold all the paradoxes in the mind and heart at the same time, and also be able to zero it all so that he or she can get a glimpse of the ultimate origin, which is referred to Shiva or Parashiva in the Kashmir Shaivite philosophy. The academics have faced a big question or difficulty in the study of Kashmir Shaiva Darshana because they have not been able to draw the academic lines of differentiating it or getting it fully compared to other systems, because this system, which according to great Abhinavgupta resembles the honey collected by the bee from different flowers, but still remains not only unique in itself, but dynamically progressive. This is the tradition of unsettling the pet traditions of spiritual realms across the board, has even its own interpretation of the Bhagavad Gita, the song of the divine. The Kashmir Shaiva Darshana word is not some illusion or maya, but the real expression of Lord and his manifesting power Shakti. World is taken as much divine as the abode of Shiva. The senses are not looked down upon as something inferior, like some other traditions which go on preaching move beyond senses, and senses are deceptive. This deception of senses, too, is accepted as the divine play in Kashmir Shaiva philosophy, and senses are referred to as gods. Abhinavgupta has referred to Bhagavad Gita's famous Karma Yoga, chapter 3 shloka, about the Devas. He says the Devas, being pleased by sacrifices, will also please you. Thus nourishing one another, there will reign general prosperity for all. No one has interpreted this verse like Abhinavgupta. Abhinavgupta says that your organs are your gods. According to him, these things are worthwhile for those who are likely to go into the state of Parabhairava. The delicious things are not meant for those who are lost in the world and its affairs. To put it in the modern sense, these things are meant for mature minds with ripe intellect who have comprehensive understanding of the self, because for immature, these delicious things just mean indulgence of senses, which leads to the gross state of being, while as the whole purpose of every sutra here is associated with the journey towards the subtle the divine spanda, to experience the impulses of creative intelligence. Many have pointed out this thing time and again, that it needs a mature mind to just understand the basics of Kashmir Shaiva Darshana, or to put it another way, it needs a certain amount of understanding to comprehend what's the deep philosophy of existence woven in sutras, which are not much in number, but offer the unlimited depths and unfathomable heights to seekers of divine. There have been attempts at academic level to interpret Kashmir Shaiva philosophy, but the main issue that surfaces in all these activities is that attempts are made to fit Kashmir Shaiva Darshana into the jargons of academia rather than trying to raise the level of academic research to encompass all those which seems beyond it. Kashmir Shaiva Darshana is not subject of some social science discipline. It can't be boxed in some sociological or psychological theory or studied under the banner of comparative study of religions. When we study the sutras or meditation methods of this great darshana, many modern gurus seem like they have just started. For example, in Vijnana Bhairav Tantra, which has 112 meditation methods to be chosen from, even sexual desire or just some memory of union is said to be used to reach transcendental state. The mix of a Freudian permissiveness and the silent influence of Victorian Puritanical ideas, which are prominent influence in the disciplines of modern sociology and psychology, total misunderstanding of Shaiva Darshana has been created. It's not meant for any intellectual activism also. Sharing with you two incidents which took place during a 3-day seminar on Kashmir Shaiva Darshana, organized 2 years ago in Kashmir on a grand scale. In one incident, when a lady professor of philosophy from some university was reading her paper, a student, a local student, a Kashmiri student, stood up and raised a question. Is Kashmir Shaivism transcendentalism? The professor had no answer to this simple question because the academic jargon unnerved her. Instead of going by assertions, she could have just broken the word transcendentalism into two and things would have been clear. Because suffix ism itself implies a set of beliefs and adherence to them, when there is adherence to some thought, it is where does transcendence come in? Yet another expert, perhaps being the ardent follower of some other ism, while talking about Laleshwari, tried to portray the saint who is epitome of Kashmir Shaiva Darshana, a rebel against the priestly class of Kashmir. Shaiva Darshana starts from freedom. Even gurus are not allowed to force methods on disciples. So what was there to rebel for Laleshwari? But the tendency to paint everything as class struggle and conflict of economic interest has not left the social science till now, and it may remain there for many more years. Here sharing some of the solutions provided by the great Shaiva Shastris to the dilemma of human existence. This meant to give a perspective to the inclusiveness of this darshana in the spiritual sphere. Those familiar with texts like Vijnana Bhairav Tantra know that Kashmir Shaiva Darshana has place for everyone, including atheists, realized beings, as well as starters. In Shaiva Darshana, the spiritual practices are broadly classified into 3 categories according to the level and evolutionary state of the individual, as described in detail by Swami Lakshmanchu in his texts. It will not be out of place to say that in this philosophy, the whole thrust is on awareness, its expansion and emancipation. As the saying goes, awareness is the truth. In Sanskrit, the measures or methods are called upayas. These upayas are broadly divided into 3 categories. The measures adopted by individual, that's the individual who is aware of his separateness or individuality and feels somewhat powerless, as his or her awareness is not expansive still. To develop awareness or to expand awareness, some methods are prescribed and he or she is given the best method suited to him or her by the Guru. These methods, which are used by the individual, are called anupaya. These methods include concentration on breath, concentration on sense organs and their sensations, contemplation, and concentration on a particular place. In Kashmir Shaiva Darshana, Uchchar or the concentration of breath is used to center awareness. It means paying attention to the breath in the gross state, in and out, and the pauses. This concentration on breath can be either with or without sound. Another method or major uses sense organs like eyes or ears. Here, the main objective is to be aware of the images which eye brings, or be aware of the sounds which the ear brings, or the sensation of touch. Here, the main thing is to be aware of this sensation which sense organs bring without any cerebral interference in the beginning. These exercises are said to relax the brain and nervous system, and openness to higher realities is developed as the brain comes out of fight and flight response and is comfortable with exploring different dimensions of reality. Another method in this category is contemplation. Here we can use the contemplation on the meaning of mantra, or one can contemplate lotus in the heart without reciting anything. Some people may contemplate on images and go with the flow. All these methods are meant to give some space and relaxation to mind-body so as to make way for something sublime to enter one's consciousness. Another way of focusing the mind may be to concentrate on some body parts or run the attention throughout the body. All these methods are related to our somatic awareness. Another category of measures is called Shaktopaya, where energies are of paramount importance. Here, the receptivity of the inner quiet are important, because it's in quietness that one receives grace of the Lord. Here, the awareness has already reached a peak where the aspirant doesn't need to recite mantras or be aware of the breath. He has to just be aware of the inaction during action, to see effortlessness in the effort. To put it another way, just center himself. Centering can be practiced between two actions, between two thoughts, and velocity of awareness is paramount. Here, awareness must be firm and not loose. Otherwise, one has to go back to the individual efforts mentioned earlier. Here, the awareness has to be sustained and delicate at the same time in order to succeed at the centering. If the awareness is wavering, one has to start the process all over from the beginning. Then there is the approach of thoughtlessness. Here, the purpose is to sustain thoughtlessness. That means one must be at such a stage where he or she can maintain thoughtlessness and, by the grace of Master, enter transcendental state of consciousness. So I'll cut short, I think. And finally, it is important to mention here that the desire to make or mark timeline for Kashmir Shaiva Darshana is a misplaced effort, starting at zero from Vasugupta and trying to give it all a sort of cutliest color doesn't stain the ground. Compilation of something doesn't mean that it began and then and there. Wherever humans had time to reflect, they reflected on the mysteries they were living in and got the answers. Not every answer was recorded exactly at the same time, or many were recorded at all. All answers stayed in the human consciousness, waiting for the right receptivity to pour themselves into receptive hearts. Similarly, 112 meditations on Vijnana Bhairav Tantra didn't happen or were revealed like some explosion at once. Compilation is different from authorship, but those who are too enthusiastic to construct timeline for these spiritual insights usually seem to ignore the basic truth of Shaiva Darshana. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now we break for lunch. So we will assemble here after 1 hour, and we will, there'll be presentations on Kashmiri culture through ages. Thank you.